Prologue. The Taste of Ruin. The rain came down in sheets the night Evelyn Harper opened the last bottle. Not the gentle romantic rain of movies, the kind that mists over vineyards and makes everything look soft and forgiving. This was the brutal, relentless rain that turned the dirt roads to mud and hammered against the cellar's stone walls like accusations, like fists demanding entry. The newspaper sat on the tasting table, already soft with moisture from where she'd carried it in from the house. The headline was still legible despite the water damage, black ink bleeding into gray. Ezra Castellano, alleged mafia financier, found dead in federal custody. Parent suicide. Investigation pending. Evelyn didn't need to read the rest. She'd memorized every word during the 6 hours since the call came through. Since Victoria Chen's voice, always so composed, so legal, had cracked just slightly when she said, "Evelyn, I'm so sorry. He's gone." Such a small word for something so absolute. The cellar was cold. November cold, the kind that seeped into your bones and made you understand, finally, what it meant to be alone. Evelyn had built this space 5 years ago with Ezra's money and her vision. Temperature controlled, humidity perfect, every rack custom-made to hold the bottles that would outlast them both. She'd succeeded. The wine would outlast them. It already had. Her fingers traced the label of the bottle she'd selected. Romani Conti, 1945. The vintage produced in the shadow of war, when every grape was precious and every bottle a small miracle. She'd paid $230,000 for it 3 years ago, using money from a wine auction that had gone so well the buyers had applauded. Ezra had called from prison that night. His one phone call for the week, reserved for her always, and she'd told him about the sale, about the Romani Conti she'd won. "Save it," he'd said. His voice rough through the prison phone system's distortion. "Save it for when I come home," she'd promised. Evelyn Harper had become very good at breaking promises. The corkscrew was cold in her hand. Sterling silver. A wedding gift from a wine distributor who probably hadn't known he was celebrating a marriage that would destroy them both. She inserted it carefully, professionally, the way she'd been trained. The way she'd done 10,000 times before. The cork came out with that perfect whisper of sound, the sigh of a bottle that had been waiting decades to breathe. She poured 2 glasses. Crystal stemware, the good ones. Not the ones they used for tastings or tours or the celebrity chef who'd filmed an episode here last spring. These were from Ezra's penthouse, salvaged before the FBI had seized everything. She'd hidden them in a case marked, "Kitchen Supplies, 2019 vintage," and no one had thought to look. The wine was the color of garnets and regret. Evelyn lifted the first glass, studied it in the candlelight. She'd turned off the electric lights. This moment deserved something older, something that understood ceremony. The wine legs ran down the inside of the glass in perfect rivulets, each one a small miracle of chemistry and time. "To you," she said to the empty chair across from her. Her voice echoed wrong in the cellar. "Oh, hello. To alone." She'd set out the chair this afternoon when the rain had started and she'd known, the way you know things in your bones, that tonight was the night. She'd positioned it exactly where Ezra used to sit during their private tastings, back when they'd first bought the vineyard. Back when everything was possible and nothing was ruined yet. Back before she understood that some things, once opened, could never be sealed again. The wine tasted like silk and smoke and the end of everything. Evelyn closed her eyes and she was 28 again, champagne drunk and devastated, throwing herself at a stranger in a Tom Ford suit. She could feel his hands catching her shoulders, steady and sure. Could hear his voice, careful. "That champagne is worth more than most people's cars." She'd thought he was saving her that night. She'd been so catastrophically wrong. "We made something beautiful anyway," Evelyn whispered to the empty cellar, to the man who would never taste this wine, to the ghost that lived in every bottle on every rack. "Didn't we? Tell me we did. Tell me it wasn't all for nothing." The rain answered with thunder. Evelyn poured the second glass and set it across from her, in front of the empty chair. The wine glowed in the candlelight like blood, like rubies, like all the beautiful dangerous things she'd ever wanted. Then she opened the drawer in the tasting table, the one that locked, the one only she had the key to, and pulled out the manila envelope that had arrived yesterday. Federal Express, signature required, from Victoria Chen's office. Inside, a letter handwritten in Ezra's elegant script, and a smaller envelope sealed with red wax. She'd known better than to open them immediately. Some things required ceremony, required the right wine, the right moment, the right amount of darkness. The letter was dated 3 weeks ago, before he died, before the apparent suicide that everyone with half a brain knew wasn't suicide at all. Evelyn, if you're reading this, then Victoria has done what I asked and you've finally stopped being stubborn about opening my letters. I know you stopped reading them after the first year. I don't blame you. What was I going to say? That prison was fine. That I was counting days until parole like some reformed criminal in a redemption story. We both know better than that. I need you to understand something. I don't regret any of it. Not the kiss at the gala. Not the vineyard. Not marrying you in that ridiculous ceremony where you wore a dress made of silk and hope. Not even the arrest, the trial, the cage they put me in. I regret that you're reading this alone. I regret that I won't be there when you open the second envelope. I regret that our last bottle of Romani Conti will be drunk without me. But I don't regret you. You asked me once. Do you remember? It was during a visit in year 2, and you'd been crying although you tried to hide it. You asked if I'd planned everything from the beginning. If I'd seen you at that gala and thought, there's a mark. There's someone I can use. I lied when I said no. The truth is more complicated. Yes, I noticed you before Marcus. You were the only person in that room who looked at the wine like it was art instead of status. You tasted that Krug like you were decoding secrets. I was going to introduce myself properly, maybe commission you for a private collection. Business. Clean. Then your fiancé decided to fuck your sister behind the Margot display. And I saw the exact moment your heart broke. And I wanted, God, Evelyn, I wanted to break the world for you. So yes, I planned it. The kiss, the dinner, the vineyard. I planned to give you revenge and power and everything Marcus had stolen. I planned to make you infamous and untouchable and mine. What I didn't plan was falling in love with you. What I didn't plan was you becoming the only real thing in my life. I'm writing this 3 weeks before my scheduled parole hearing. My lawyers are optimistic. The warden likes me. Turns out teaching literature classes to violent offenders makes you popular. Victoria thinks I'll be out by Christmas. I won't be. There are people, Evelyn. People I testified against, people who lost more than money when I cooperated with the FBI. They've been very patient, but patience has limits. I've received messages. Threats dressed up as friendly advice. The kind that make even prison guards nervous. I could fight it. Could ask for protective custody. Could let Victoria work her magic with federal prosecutors. I could buy myself more time. But here's what I've realized, lying in this cell at night. If I survive, they'll come for you next. They'll hurt you to hurt me. They'll take the vineyard, destroy everything we built, make you suffer in ways that will destroy what's left of my soul. Or I can end it first. By the time you read this, I'll have made my choice. Victoria has instructions. She'll make sure the vineyard stays yours, untouchable, clean. She'll make sure everyone believes I acted alone, that you were an innocent woman seduced by a criminal. She's very good at her job. You'll hate me for this. You'll call me a coward, a martyr, all the things you called me when I tried to push you away at the trial. You'll be right. But you'll be alive. You'll be free. And the wine you make will outlast both of us. In the second envelope, you'll find the key to a storage unit in Red Hook. The address is written on the back. Inside, you'll find things I've been collecting for you. Bottles I've acquired through channels that will never trace back to you. Art that's been cleaned through so many auctions it's legitimate now, and cash. Enough to expand the vineyard, to make Harper into everything we dreamed. Use it. Build something that makes the wine world weep. Make vintages that will be studied and coveted and treasured long after we're both gone. Make them remember that Evelyn Harper touched the monster and made him human. Love you. I loved you the moment you asked a stranger to kiss you just to feel powerful for 5 seconds. I loved you when you threw your engagement ring at your ex like a grenade. I loved you when you looked at me like I was salvation instead of damnation. I love you now, writing this letter in a cell, knowing what's coming. I'll love you when I'm gone. Don't mourn me too long, Bellissima. The wine is waiting. And you have a legacy to build. There's always Ezra. Pes. Open the Romani Conti. 1945. Don't save it. Don't wait for a better moment. There won't be one. Drink it and remember we had this. Whatever else happened, whatever it cost, we had this. Evelyn's hands shook as she set down the letter. The second envelope sat before her. Red wax seal unbroken. A key visible through the thin paper. She should open it. Should go to Red Hook tomorrow. Should see what final gifts Ezra had left for her. Should cry, scream, break something. Do whatever normal people did when the man they loved chose death over life with them. Instead, she picked up her glass of Romani Conti and drank. It was perfect. Course it was perfect. Layers of cherry and earth and something darker. Leather, tobacco, the ghost of smoke from barrels that had survived a war. It was everything wine should be. Complex, haunting, irreplaceable. Tasted like goodbye. I hate you, Evelyn whispered to the empty chair. I hate you for leaving. I hate you for loving me. I hate you for being right. She poured more wine into the second glass, filling it to the proper level. Not too much. You had to leave room for the bouquet to breathe, to develop. But you were right about one thing. She raised her glass to the empty chair, to the ghost of the man who'd kissed her 7 years ago and destroyed her life in the best possible way. We made something beautiful. Something that will outlast us both. The candles flickered. The rain continued its assault on the stone walls. And Evelyn Harper, master sommelier, criminal's wife, builder of empires, sat alone in her wine cellar and drank a $200,000 bottle of Burgundy with a dead man's ghost. Outside, the vineyard waited. Rows and rows of vines heavy with next year's harvest, oblivious to tragedy. In the morning, workers would arrive. Orders would need filling. A French critic was scheduled for next week. Life would continue with the brutal efficiency of all things that don't care about your breaking heart. But tonight was for grief and wine and the taste of ruin. Tonight was for remembering what it felt like to be 28 and reckless, to ask a stranger for a kiss and receive a kingdom. Tonight was for understanding finally that some prices are paid in installments over years. And some bottles, once opened, can never be sealed again. Evelyn finished her glass and poured another. The bottle was half empty now. Half full. Depending on your perspective. She'd become very good at perspective these last 4 years. To you, she said again, raising her glass to the man who wasn't there. To us. To everything we built and everything it cost. The wine tasted like memory and regret and the particular sweetness of things that don't last. And to the ruins, Evelyn whispered. God help me, I'll love them anyway. The candles burned lower. The rain fell harder. And in the cellar beneath Harper Vineyard, a woman drank wine with a ghost and waited for morning to decide whether legacy was worth the cost of living. 7 years earlier, at a gala in Manhattan, Evelyn Harper had touched a monster and called it salvation. This is how that story ended. This is how it began. Chapter 1. The kiss that ruins everything. 3 years before the fall, Evelyn Harper's hands were shaking, and that was unacceptable. Master sommeliers did not shake. They did not sweat through silk dresses at galas they'd spent 3 years planning. They did not sample their own inventory like anxious amateurs, downing glass after glass of Krug like it was water instead of $300 champagne. But master sommeliers also didn't typically find their fiancés with their tongues down their sisters' throats, so perhaps the rules were different tonight. The Metropolitan Museum's Temple of Dender glowed amber in the evening light. 200 guests scattered among Egyptian artifacts and carefully positioned wine displays. Evelyn had curated every bottle personally, a journey through Burgundy's greatest hits, anchored by a 1996 Petrus that had the Russian ambassador practically weeping into his glass. Her reputation depended on tonight. At 28, she was the youngest master sommelier on the East Coast. Publications called her revolutionary. Wine Spectator had done a profile. 3 vineyards wanted her consulting. Marcus had proposed to her at last year's gala, dropping to one knee in front of everyone, promising they'd build something legendary together. His family had a vineyard in Connecticut. Mediocre Pinot Noir, overpriced for tourists, but with potential. With her expertise and his family's land, they could create something extraordinary. Legacy. She'd said yes because it made sense. Because Marcus was handsome and well-connected and understood the wine world. Because at 28, you were supposed to have a plan, a partner, a path forward. She'd said yes because she didn't know yet that some legacies are built on graves. Ms. Harper. A waiter appeared at her elbow, young and nervous. The Italian ambassador is asking about the Barolo selection. He wants to know if you have the 98 Conterno. Evelyn forced her professional smile back into place. Tell him I have something better. The 2001 Giacosa. Less obvious, more elegant. Have Paolo pour him a taste. The waiter fled, relieved to have a mission. Evelyn reached for another glass of champagne from a passing tray, and caught sight of her reflection in one of the museum's glass cases. Her dark hair was still perfectly pinned. Her makeup unsmudged despite 3 glasses of champagne and rising panic. She looked composed, successful, like a woman who had her life together. She looked nothing like someone whose entire world had shattered 20 minutes ago. The memory hit her again, turning the corner behind the Chateau Margaux display, the 1945 worth more than a car positioned for maximum drama, and finding Marcus with Claire pressed against the wall. His hand up her dress. Her manicured nails in his hair. The same hair Evelyn had touched that morning while he'd promised tonight would change their lives. He'd been right about that at least. Evelyn! Her assistant Nina materialized, iPad clutched like a shield. The Times critic wants to interview you about the Petrus sourcing. And your mother called. Something about the seating chart for the wedding. And Marcus is looking for you. He seems agitated. Of course he was agitated. She'd caught him, made eye contact, and walked away without a word. No scene, no shouting, just cold silence while his face had gone white with panic. Claire had smiled. That venomous smile she'd perfected since childhood, since their father had died and left everything to Evelyn because she was the one who'd inherited his palate, his passion, his gift. Since your engagement party, darling, Claire had said, still pressed against Marcus, shameless. He proposed to you at noon and was inside me by midnight. You were always too busy with your wine obsession to notice what you were losing. 6 months. They'd been planning a wedding for 6 months while he'd been fucking her sister. Tell the Times critic I'll find him in 15 minutes, Evelyn said, her voice steady through force of will. Tell my mother I'll call her tomorrow. And tell Marcus. She paused, took another drink. Tell Marcus I'm busy. Are you okay? Nina asked, concern creasing her forehead. You look. I'm perfect. Evelyn handed her the empty champagne flute. Everything is perfect. This gala is perfect. My life is perfect. She walked away before Nina could argue, weaving through clusters of guests who all wanted a moment of her time, all wanted to tell her how impressed they were, how the wine selection was inspired, how she was clearly going places. None of them knew she was 3 glasses deep and circling the drain. Evelyn found herself near the museum's reflecting pool, where the crowd thinned slightly. She could breathe here, could think, could decide what the hell she was supposed to do now. Cancel the wedding, obviously. That was non-negotiable. Marcus had destroyed that option the moment he'd touched Claire. But the scandal. God, the scandal. Everyone in the wine world would know within hours. The whispers would start. Did you hear about Evelyn Harper? Found her fiancé with her sister at her own gala. Humiliating. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Where are you? We need to talk. It's not what it looked like. Evelyn laughed. Sharp, bitter. Not what it looked like. As if she'd imagined his hand disappearing under Claire's dress. As if she'd hallucinated her sister's satisfied smirk. She typed back, fuck you. We're done. Deleted it before sending. Too emotional. Too revealing. She needed to be cold. Professional. In control. Another text. Evelyn, please. It was a mistake. Love you. The champagne was making everything fuzzy at the edges, soft and blurred. Or maybe that was just shock. Maybe this was what betrayal felt like drowning in expensive wine while the world continued around you, oblivious. Careful. The voice came from behind her. Deep, smooth, dark as aged whiskey. Evelyn spun too fast, her heel catching on the marble floor, and collided with someone solid. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her. The scent hit her immediately. Cedar and leather and something expensive, the kind of cologne you couldn't buy in department stores. Old money. Old power. That champagne is worth more than most people's cars, the voice continued. Would be a shame to waste it on trash. Evelyn tilted her head back and found herself staring at a chest in a perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit. She looked up further, past a silk tie, past a jaw that could cut glass, past lips that looked carved from marble, and met eyes so dark they were almost black. The man was beautiful in a dangerous way. Severe cheekbones, a Roman nose, and a scar that traced from his left eyebrow into his hairline, pale against olive skin. He looked like he'd walked out of a Renaissance painting of a fallen angel, all sharp edges and shadows. He was looking past her at something across the room. Evelyn followed his gaze and saw Marcus pushing through the crowd, Claire trailing behind him. Marcus's face was flushed, his tie askew. He looked desperate and angry and nothing like the composed businessman she'd agreed to marry. Your ex? The stranger asked, and there was something in his tone, amusement mixed with contempt. As of 20 minutes ago, Evelyn heard herself say. The champagne was definitely making decisions now. Caught him with my sister. Behind the Chateau Margaux, which is just insulting on multiple levels. The stranger's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. The 1945. You know your wine. I know value when I see it. His hands were still on her shoulders, warm through the thin silk of her dress. And wasting a performance like that on infidelity shows a profound lack of taste. Around them, the crowd had gone strangely quiet. People were backing away, creating a circle of empty space. The stranger didn't seem to notice, but Evelyn felt it. That pressure, that sense of something predatory moving through the herd. Who the hell are you? Marcus's voice cracked across the distance. He'd reached them, Claire at his heels, both of them flushed and disheveled. The stranger's eyes never left Marcus, cold and assessing. Someone who appreciates fine wine more than you appreciate fine women, apparently. His hand moved from Evelyn's shoulder to her waist, possessive and deliberate. She should have pulled away. Should have established boundaries with this beautiful, dangerous stranger. Instead, she leaned into him. This establishment belongs to people I do business with, the stranger continued. His voice silk over steel. I don't tolerate mediocre men making scenes at quality events. There was something in the way he said business that made Marcus go pale. Around them, Evelyn noticed men in dark suits positioning themselves at exits. Not security, at least not museum security. These men moved differently, with a kind of purpose that suggested they'd done worse things than escort drunk guests outside. Ezra Castellano, someone whispered nearby, and the name rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Evelyn's stomach dropped. She knew that name. Everyone in her world knew that name. Ezra Castellano, the man who controlled the underground market for rare wines, stolen art, artifacts that museums would kill for. The FBI had been trying to build a case against him for a decade. Articles called him the gentleman criminal. The Times had done a profile that heavily implied he was connected to every major art theft on the East Coast. And she was leaning against him like he was her salvation instead of probably a very dangerous criminal. The champagne chose that moment to make its worst suggestion yet. I need a favor, Evelyn heard herself say, turning in Ezra's grip to face him fully. She had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. He was tall, well over 6 feet, and built like someone who did more than sign papers and make phone calls. Up close, she could see flecks of amber in those dark eyes. Could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. Could see the way he was looking at her. Curious, amused, something darker underneath. "Can you kiss me?" The words tumbled out champagne loose and reckless. "I want to make him jealous." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Ezra's eyebrows rose fractionally, the only sign of surprise on his otherwise impassive face. His thumb traced her jawline, tilting her face up slightly. "You're drunk," he observed. Not unkindly. "I'm devastated," Evelyn corrected. "But also drunk, yes. 3 glasses of Krug and half a bottle of Petrus because the Italian ambassador cancelled. Please. I just caught my fiancé with my sister and I refused to be the pathetic one at my own event." She could feel Marcus staring. Could feel Claire's shock radiating across the space between them. Could feel 300 pairs of eyes watching this catastrophe unfold. Ezra's hand moved to cup her jaw, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with surprising gentleness. He had calluses, she noticed hazily. This was a man who did more than deal in stolen art. "Do you have any idea who I am?" His voice was low enough that only she could hear, intimate as a secret. "A man who appreciates fine wine," Evelyn quoted back at him, reckless with heartbreak and champagne. "And apparently someone everyone's terrified of, which makes you perfect for making my cheating bastard of an ex-fiancé lose his mind." Something flickered in those dark eyes. Amusement maybe, or calculation. His thumb traced her lower lip and Evelyn's breath caught despite everything. "This is a terrible idea," Ezra murmured. But he was already lowering his head. "All my best ideas are terrible," Evelyn whispered back. When his mouth touched hers, the entire world disappeared. The kiss started as performance. Evelyn was certain of that. Ezra Castellano was simply doing a drunk, devastated woman a favor, giving her a moment of dignity in front of her cheating fiancé. But somewhere between the first touch of his lips and the second breath, it stopped being theater and became something else entirely. His mouth was warm and tasted like the Chateau d'Yquem she'd served earlier, honey and complexity and something darker underneath. His hand slid into her hair, pins scattering, tilting her head to deepen the kiss. And Evelyn forgot that they had an audience. Forgot that she'd only asked for a simple kiss. Forgot everything except the way his other hand had moved to the small of her back, pulling her closer against that expensive suit. She made a sound, something embarrassingly desperate, and felt him smile against her mouth. Then he bit her lower lip, gentle but possessive, and Evelyn's knees actually buckled. He caught her easily, shifting his weight to support her as if women fainted into his arms every day. Maybe they did. Maybe this was just another Tuesday for Ezra Castellano, kissing devastated women at galas. But the way his fingers tightened in her hair suggested otherwise. When he finally pulled back, Evelyn's lipstick was ruined and her carefully pinned hair had come loose. Ezra looked completely unaffected except for a slight darkness in his eyes and the faint trace of her lipstick on his mouth. He wiped it away with his thumb, never breaking eye contact. "Better?" he asked quietly, and his voice had gone rougher, like gravel wrapped in velvet. Evelyn couldn't speak. She nodded, her fingers still clutched in his lapels, her heart hammering against her ribs. Behind her, she heard Claire's outraged gasp. Heard Marcus saying something that might have been her name. The jazz quartet had stopped playing entirely. "Good." Ezra's hand was still in her hair, possessive and warm. "Now smile at them like you've won." She did, turning in his arms to face Marcus and Claire with what she hoped was devastating confidence, despite the fact that her legs weren't working properly and her world had just tilted on its axis. Marcus looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Claire's face had gone an ugly shade of red. And Evelyn felt nothing but champagne fuzzy satisfaction and the lingering heat of Ezra's mouth on hers. "The wedding's off," she announced, her voice carrying across the silent gala. "Obviously. Claire, you can have him. He's clearly more your speed." She twisted the engagement ring off her finger. 3 carats, platinum setting, Marcus's grandmother's, and threw it at his chest. It bounced off his lapel and skittered across the marble floor with a sound like breaking glass. "I'm upgrading." The crowd erupted in whispers. Evelyn felt Ezra's chest shake with silent laughter against her back. "Evie, you don't know what you're doing," Marcus started, but one look from Ezra shut him up instantly. "I think Ms. Harper knows exactly what she's doing," Ezra said, and there was steel under the silk of his voice. "And I think you should leave. Both of you. Before I have you removed less politely." The men in dark suits materialized closer, and suddenly it wasn't a suggestion anymore. It was a threat wrapped in velvet, the kind that made smart people comply. Marcus grabbed Claire's arm, and they retreated through the crowd, which parted for them like they carried plague. Evelyn watched them go and felt nothing but a strange lightness, as if she'd shed a weight she hadn't known she was carrying. "That was insane," she breathed, still leaning against Ezra because standing on her own seemed ambitious. "I just threw away my engagement at my own event and kissed a criminal in front of 300 witnesses." "Alleged criminal," Ezra corrected, amusement coloring his tone. "The FBI hasn't proven anything." His hands were still on her waist, steadying her. "And technically, you're the one who kissed me. I was simply accommodating. You bit my lip. You moaned." Evelyn's face flamed. Around them, the gala was slowly returning to life, conversations resuming in hushed, excited tones. She'd given them the scandal of the season. Tomorrow, her name would be in every society column from New York to Miami. "I should probably." She gestured vaguely at the room, at her responsibilities as sommelier, at the life she'd just spectacularly imploded. "I have wine to serve, Russians to schmooze, a reputation to salvage." "Your reputation just became significantly more interesting," Ezra observed. He released her slowly, like he was making sure she wouldn't fall over. "The sommelier who kissed Ezra Castellano and lived to tell about it. You'll be infamous by morning." "Is that supposed to comfort me? It's supposed to prepare you." He straightened his tie, which had apparently rumpled without her noticing. "They'll ask questions. About me, about us, about what this means. What will you tell them?" Evelyn hadn't thought that far ahead. The champagne was wearing off, replaced by the cold reality of what she'd just done. She'd kissed a man the FBI called untouchable, a dealer in stolen goods and black market luxuries. She'd done it in public, in front of everyone who mattered in her industry. "The truth," she decided, lifting her chin. "That you helped me when I needed it. That my fiancé is a cheating bastard who doesn't deserve the expensive wine I was going to serve at our wedding." Ezra studied her for a long moment, something calculating in his expression. Something that made her pulse quicken for reasons that had nothing to do with champagne. "You have excellent taste in wine," he said finally. "The Petrus you were drinking earlier. 1996. "Correct," Evelyn said automatically, sommelier instincts overriding everything else. His smile was slow and dangerous. "Have dinner with me tomorrow night. I have a bottle of Romani Conti I've been saving for someone who would actually appreciate it. That's a $50,000 bottle of wine." "I'm aware." He pulled a card from his pocket. Matte black with silver embossing, just a phone number, nothing else. 8 o'clock. "I'll send a car." Evelyn took the card, her fingers brushing his. Electricity jumped between them, sharp and undeniable. "This is insane," she said. "You've said that already." Ezra leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "But you're going to say yes anyway. 'Cause you're curious. Because that kiss felt like the first honest thing to happen to you in 6 months. Because a man who cheats with your sister doesn't deserve you." He pulled back, and Evelyn saw the truth in his eyes. He knew she'd come. Knew she was already hooked. Not on him necessarily, but on the feeling of being wanted by someone dangerous. Someone who looked at her like she was rare and valuable. "One dinner," she heard herself say. "To thank you for tonight." "Of course." His smile said he knew she was lying to herself. "Just dinner." He left then, his security melting away with him like shadows at dawn, leaving Evelyn alone in the center of the gala with a black card in her hand and the taste of him still on her lips. Around her, the whispers crescendoed. She just agreed to have dinner with the most dangerous man on the East Coast. The Russian ambassador approached, smiling widely. "Ms. Harper, I think I need something very strong after that entertainment. What do you recommend?" Evelyn smiled back, slipping the card into her clutch. Her hands had stopped shaking. "I have a Macallan 50-year. That seems appropriate." "Perfect reasoning. It's dangerous, expensive, and absolutely worth the risk." "Perfect." He laughed, not knowing she wasn't talking about whiskey at all. Evelyn made it through the rest of the gala on autopilot, smiling, chatting, discussing terroir and oak aging with people who all wanted to know about the kiss. About Ezra. About what happened next. She deflected with professional ease, but inside, her mind was racing. She just kissed Ezra Castellano. Ezra Castellano. And she'd agreed to have dinner with him. And the worst part, the absolutely catastrophic part, was that she wanted to. Not for revenge. Not to make Marcus jealous. She wanted to because when Ezra had kissed her, something had woken up inside her that she hadn't known was sleeping. Something reckless and hungry and tired of being careful. Something that would destroy her if she let it. By the time the last guest left at midnight, Evelyn's feet ached and her face hurt from smiling. Nina found her in the Temple of Dender, staring at the reflecting pool. "So," Nina said carefully. "That happened." "That happened," Evelyn agreed. "Ezra Castellano." "Yep. The alleged crime lord." Alleged being the key word. "Evelyn." Nina sat down beside her. "Are you okay? Like genuinely okay? Because you just had your life blown up and then made it infinitely more complicated in about 30 seconds. Evelyn laughed. Sharp, slightly hysterical. "I'm the opposite of okay. I'm a disaster. I'm a cautionary tale waiting to happen. But you're going to dinner with him anyway." "I'm going to dinner with him anyway." Why? That was the question, wasn't it? Why was she, master sommelier, professional success story, sensible person, going to have dinner with a man who dealt in stolen art and probably worse? "Because," Evelyn said slowly, "when he kissed me, I felt more alive than I've felt in years. And I want to know if that was real or just champagne and adrenaline." Nina was quiet for a moment. Then, "What if it was real? Then I'm in trouble. What if it wasn't? Then I got a great story and a $50,000 bottle of wine out of the worst night of my life." Evelyn stood, smoothing down her ruined dress. "Either way, I need to know." She left the museum at 1 a.m, riding home in a taxi with her shoes in her hand and Ezra's card burning a hole in her clutch. In her apartment, small, expensive, filled with wine books and empty takeout containers, she pulled out her laptop and did what she should have done before agreeing to anything. She Googled Ezra Castellano. The results were terrifying. Federal investigations. Suspected arms dealing. A gallery in Soho that was definitely a front for something illegal. He'd been photographed at charity events with senators and supermodels, always in the background, always watching. One article called him the gentleman criminal. Another called him New York's most eligible sociopath. There were rumors of violence, though never proven. Rumors of people who crossed him disappearing, though never confirmed. Rumors of a network so vast and so careful that the FBI couldn't touch it without bringing down half of New York's elite. And she'd asked him to kiss her. Begged him, actually. In front of 300 witnesses. Evelyn's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Sleep well, Bellissima. Tomorrow night I'll show you what real wine tastes like." She should delete it. Should block the number. Should call Nina back and say she'd changed her mind, that this was too dangerous, too stupid, too much. Instead she typed back, "What should I wear?" The response came immediately. "Something you don't mind ruining. Wine stains, you understand." Evelyn stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she did something she'd never done before. Something the old Evelyn, the careful Evelyn, The Evelyn who'd agreed to marry Marcus because it made sense would never do. She typed, "I'll risk it," and pressed send. Outside her window, New York glittered with a million lights. Somewhere in that sprawling city, Ezra Castellano was probably reading her message and smiling that dangerous smile. And Evelyn Harper, master sommelier, professional success story, sensible person, went to bed with a criminal's card on her nightstand and the taste of danger still on her lips. She dreamed of wine the color of blood and eyes dark as sin and the feeling of falling into something she'd never climb out of. She dreamed of ruin dressed up as salvation. And when she woke up at noon with a headache like an ice pick through her skull and 17 missed calls from her mother, the first thing she did was text Ezra. "Still on for tonight?" His response was immediate. "I'll pick you up at 7. We're black." Evelyn looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. Hair a mess, makeup smudged, looking like she'd been through a war. But also alive. Electric. Dangerous. "You're making a mistake," she told her reflection. Her reflection smiled back, reckless and hungry. "I know," she said. "But I'm doing it anyway." Chapter 2. The Devil's Invitation. Evelyn spent the day in a state of controlled panic. Her mother called 6 more times. She ignored all of them. Marcus called twice, left voicemails that started apologetic and ended angry. She deleted them without listening past the first 10 seconds. Claire sent a single text. "You'll regret this." Evelyn stared at it for a full minute before responding. "I already do. But not for the reasons you think." By 3 in the afternoon, she was on her 4th espresso and her second existential crisis. Nina had come over with bagels and moral support, though the support was starting to feel more like an intervention. "You don't have to do this," Nina said for the 5th time, perched on Evelyn's kitchen counter. "You could just not go. Block his number. Pretend last night was champagne-induced temporary insanity." "It was champagne-induced temporary insanity," Evelyn replied, sorting through her closet with increasing desperation. "But I'm going anyway." "Why?" "Because I need to know." "Know what?" Evelyn pulled out a black dress. Simple, elegant, the kind that looked expensive because it was. "If I'm capable of being someone other than the woman who would have married Marcus." Nina was quiet for a moment. Then, "Evie, Marcus was a cheating asshole, but Ezra Castellano is allegedly a criminal. Like actual criminal. The kind the FBI builds task forces for. Allegedly being the key word. That's not funny. I'm not joking." Evelyn held the dress up to herself, studying her reflection. "Look, I know this is insane. I know I'm probably making the worst decision of my life. But when he kissed me last night I felt," she paused, searching for words. "I felt like I was finally awake. Like I'd been sleepwalking through my entire life and suddenly someone shook me." "That's called adrenaline," Nina said gently. "And possibly alcohol poisoning." "Maybe." Evelyn hung the dress back up, pulled out another. "Or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's realizing that I was about to marry a man who made me feel small. Who looked at my passion for wine like it was a hobby instead of my life's work. Marcus wanted a wife who would support his mediocre vineyard. Ezra looked at me like you were prey. Like I was art." Nina hopped off the counter, came to stand beside Evelyn in front of the closet. "That's somehow more terrifying." "I know. But you're still going." "I'm still going." Nina sighed, resigned. "Okay. Then we're doing this right. You're not showing up to dinner with a probable crime lord looking anything less than devastating. You're going to walk in there like you own the world, have your wine, get your answers and walk out. No getting seduced. No getting recruited into his art theft ring. No falling for dangerous men with perfect bone structure." "Agreed. I mean it, Evie. One dinner." "That's it. One dinner," Evelyn echoed. She was lying and they both knew it. At 6:30, Evelyn stood in front of her bathroom mirror and barely recognized herself. The dress was black silk, cut high at the neck but backless, elegant and slightly dangerous. Her hair was down, dark waves that fell past her shoulders, Nothing like the professional updo she usually wore. Minimal jewelry. Small diamond studs, her grandmother's thin gold bracelet. Red lipstick that made her look older, sharper, like someone who made dangerous decisions and owned them. She looked like a woman going to her execution. Or her coronation. The line between the two felt increasingly blurred. Her phone buzzed at exactly 7 downstairs. No car service this time. When Evelyn looked out her window, she saw a black Mercedes sedan idling at the curb. Not a limo, too obvious. Not a taxi, too common. Just expensive, understated power. The driver was the same man from last night. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a kind of face that suggested he'd done worse things than chauffeur. "Ms. Harper," he said when she emerged from her building, and opened the back door with military precision. The interior smelled like leather and something else. Expensive cologne. Ezra's cologne, she realized. He'd been in this car recently. "Where are we going?" Evelyn asked as the car pulled into traffic. The driver's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "Mr. Castellano prefers surprises." "I don't." A ghost of a smile. "He mentioned you might say that. He asked me to tell you. Somewhere that serves wine worth dying for." "That's not reassuring." "It wasn't meant to be." They drove in silence through Manhattan, down Fifth Avenue past the park, through neighborhoods that got progressively quieter and more expensive. Evelyn watched the city slide past and tried to control her breathing. This was fine. This was just dinner. She'd have wine, satisfy her curiosity about whether last night's kiss had been real, and leave with her dignity intact. She was a professional. She could handle one evening with a dangerous man. The car pulled up to a building in Tribeca. Converted warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial windows. No signage, no indication that it was anything other than expensive residential real estate. The driver opened her door. "Top floor. Private elevator. Mr. Castellano is waiting." Evelyn stepped out onto the sidewalk, her heels clicking against concrete. The building's entrance was unmarked except for a discreet call box and a security camera. She pressed the button. "Ms. Harper." Ezra's voice came through the speaker, warm and slightly amused. "Come up." The door buzzed open. Inside, the lobby was all marble and modern art. A Rothko on one wall that was definitely not a reproduction, a sculpture that might have been a Giacometti. The elevator required a keycard, which sat waiting on a small table. Evelyn picked it up. Her hands were steady. That was something. The elevator was glass-walled, and as it ascended, she watched the city unfold below. Lights coming on as evening deepened, the Hudson River dark in the distance. 15 floors up, the elevator opened directly into a penthouse that stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan. The furniture was minimal but exquisite. Mid-century modern pieces mixed with what looked like actual Roman antiquities. The art on the walls made her stomach drop. "That's a Caravaggio," Evelyn breathed, staring at a painting she'd only ever seen in textbooks. "The Nativity. That's been missing since 1969. Allegedly." Ezra's voice came from behind her. He turned. He was standing in the doorway to what looked like a dining room, wearing dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Less formal than last night, but somehow more dangerous, like seeing a predator out of its cage. "I prefer to think of it as relocated," he continued, walking toward her with that same controlled grace. "To someone who appreciates it." "By relocated, you mean stolen. By stolen, you mean recovered from someone who was keeping it in a basement in Palermo." He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and leather and something darker. "Would you like to lecture me on the ethics of art preservation, or would you like the tour?" Evelyn should have turned around. Should have taken the elevator back down and never looked back. Instead, she said, "Tour." His smile was slow and devastating. "I was hoping you'd say that." The penthouse was a museum and a fortress. Ezra led her through rooms that held treasure she'd only read about. A Vermeer that had disappeared from a Boston gallery in 1990, ancient Greek pottery that should have been in the Louvre, illuminated manuscripts from the Vatican archives. How? Evelyn asked, standing in front of a Rembrandt self-portrait. How do you even acquire these things? Very carefully. Ezra stood beside her, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers. I have contacts in 40 countries. People who understand that some art is wasted on institutions that lock it away. That some pieces deserve to be seen, touched, lived with. Stolen, you mean? Liberated. That's not how the law sees it. The law, Ezra said, his voice going cold, allowed the Nazis to steal a Klimt from my great-grandmother. Allowed the Catholic Church to hoard manuscripts while scholars begged for access. Allowed private collectors to buy looted antiquities and claim ownership. Don't lecture me about law and art, Evelyn. The two have never been friends. She turned to look at him, this beautiful, dangerous man with his scarred face and his stolen masterpieces. Is that how you justify it? As some kind of Robin Hood for art? I don't justify anything. He met her eyes, unflinching. I acquire what I want from people who don't deserve it, and I keep it safe. The FBI can call it whatever they like. And what do you call it? Curating. Despite everything, Evelyn laughed. That's the most criminal thing you've said yet. Wait until you see the wine cellar. He took her hand, bold, presumptuous, and led her down a hallway lined with photographs. Evelyn caught glimpses of Ezra at various ages. A boy in Sicily standing in a vineyard, a teenager in New York looking too serious, a young man in expensive suits at gallery openings. Who are you? She asked quietly. Really? Tonight. I'm the man giving you dinner and the best wine you've ever tasted. He opened a door at the end of the hallway. Tomorrow you can decide what else I am. The wine cellar made Evelyn's breath catch. It was climate-controlled perfection. Rows and rows of bottles in custom racks, organized with a sommelier's precision. She recognized vintages that hadn't been available on the legitimate market in decades. Saw bottles worth hundreds of thousands of dollars displayed like they were grocery store purchases. This is, she moved forward, drawn like a magnet. This is impossible. Some of these bottles shouldn't exist anymore. Everything exists somewhere, Ezra said behind her. If you know where to look. She stopped in front of a 1947 Cheval Blanc, one of only 24 bottles ever produced. If the FBI saw this, they'd need a warrant. And to get a warrant, they'd need evidence. And I'm very careful about evidence. Evelyn turned to face him. Why show me this? Why risk it? Because last night, you looked at the Chateau Margaux display like you were seeing art. Because when you threw your engagement ring at your ex, you aimed for his heart instead of his face. Restraint and rage in perfect balance. Because you asked a stranger to kiss you and didn't flinch when everyone called you crazy. He moved closer, and Evelyn's back hit the wine rack behind her. Because, Ezra continued, his voice dropping lower, you're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most reckless. And I need to know which. What if I'm both? Then I'm in trouble. They stood there, inches apart, the air between them electric. Evelyn could feel her pulse in her throat, could see the way Ezra's eyes had darkened, fixed on her mouth. The wine, she said, her voice unsteady. You promised me Romani Conti. I did. But he didn't move. Tell me something first. Why did you really come tonight? And don't say curiosity. Don't say the wine. Tell me the truth. Evelyn met his eyes and made a choice. Maybe the worst choice of her life. Maybe the only honest one she'd ever made. Because when you kissed me last night, I felt more alive than I've felt in years. And I'm terrified that means something. It means everything, Ezra said quietly. And that's why you should leave. Right now. Take the elevator down, forget this address, forget my number. Marry someone safe. Make wine that wins awards. Live a good life. I don't want a good life. You don't know what you want. I want, Evelyn said, reckless and certain, to taste that Romani Conti. I want to know if wine can really be worth dying for. I want to know if you're as dangerous as everyone says, or if last night was just. He kissed her. Not gentle, not careful. Nothing like last night's performance. This was desperate and hungry, all restraint abandoned. His hands found her waist, pulled her against him, and Evelyn went willingly, her fingers tangling in his shirt. He tasted like whiskey this time, dark and smoky. His mouth moved against hers like he was drowning and she was air, and Evelyn kissed him back with 6 months of frustration and heartbreak and the sudden terrifying realization that this was what she'd been missing. Not Marcus. Not safety or sense or carefully planned futures. This fire, this hunger, this feeling of falling off a cliff and not caring about the landing. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ezra's forehead rested against hers. "This is a mistake," he said roughly. "You keep saying that. Because it's true." But his hands were still on her waist, possessive and warm. "I'm not a good man, Evelyn. I've done things that would horrify you. I will continue doing things that would horrify you. Getting involved with me will ruin you. Maybe I'm tired of being good." "You don't mean that." "Don't tell me what I mean." She pulled back to look at him, this dangerous beautiful man with his stolen art and his stolen wine and his hands on her like he'd already decided she belonged to him. "I came here tonight knowing exactly who you are. What you are. And I'm still here." "Why?" "Because," Evelyn said, the truth sharp and certain. "I looked at my life yesterday. The engagement, the wedding plans, the carefully curated future, and realized I felt nothing. I was going through motions, playing a part. And then you kissed me and I felt everything." Ezra studied her face, something complicated moving behind his eyes. "You're making a mistake. Then let me make it." She reached up, traced the scar through his eyebrow. "One dinner. One bottle of wine. Let me decide if I'm brave or reckless. And then I'll leave. I promise." "You're lying." "I know." His smile was slow and wicked and absolutely devastating. "Good. I hate liars who convince themselves they're telling the truth." He took her hand again, led her out of the wine cellar and into a dining room that was all windows and minimalist elegance. The table was set for two. Crystal stemware, white china, candles that cast shadows across the room. And in the center, breathing in a crystal decanter, Romani Conti, 1990. Evelyn's breath caught. "That's worth approximately $60,000, yes." Ezra pulled out her chair. "More if you factor in rarity. Only 450 cases produced that year. This is bottle number 73. She sat, unable to take her eyes off the wine. "How did you?" The previous owner was an investor who kept it in a temperature-controlled vault and never drank it. "I convinced him to sell." "How much convincing?" "The kind that involved 3 other bottles he wanted more and a promise not to tell his wife what he'd actually paid for them." Ezra sat across from her, picked up the decanter with reverent care. "Sometimes theft is legal. You just have to know what people want more than what they have." He poured. Perfect amount, not too much, giving the wine room to breathe and evolve. The color was extraordinary. Deep garnet, almost black in the dim light, but catching hints of ruby when the candlelight hit it. Evelyn lifted her glass, inhaled. The bouquet hit her like a symphony. Cherry, earth, something floral underneath, and a complexity that spoke to soil and sun and decades of perfect aging. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Taste it." She did. The wine exploded across her palate, layer after layer of flavor, each one more complex than the last. Cherry and leather and tobacco and something darker, something that tasted like autumn and memory and everything beautiful about time. Evelyn made a sound, half moan, half sob, and saw Ezra's expression darken with something that wasn't about wine at all. "This is..." She couldn't find words. "This is art. This is poetry. This is... worth it?" Ezra asked quietly. "Worth everything." They drank in silence for a moment, and Evelyn felt something shift between them. This wasn't just attraction anymore. This was recognition. Two people who understood that some things, art, wine, beauty, were worth any price. "Tell me about the vineyard," Ezra said, setting down his glass. "Marcus's family vineyard. The one you were going to help him run." Evelyn blinked, surprised by the change in topic. How did you? I do research. His smile was sharp. And I'm very good at it. The Harper family vineyard in Connecticut. Mediocre Pinot Noir, barely breaking even, trading entirely on reputation they haven't earned in 20 years. You've done your homework. I always do. He refilled her glass, perfectly measured, like he knew exactly how much she could handle. You would have wasted your talent there. Made Marcus's family rich while they took credit for your expertise. That's not. Evelyn paused. Actually, that's exactly what would have happened. So why agree to it? Because it made sense. Because I thought partnership was what I wanted. Because, she stopped, the wine making her honest. Because I was afraid that if I waited for something better, nothing would come. And now I've kissed a criminal and I'm drinking stolen wine in a penthouse full of stolen art. I think something better might have been the wrong goal. Ezra laughed, genuine and surprised. Most people would be running by now. Most people are smarter than me. Or less interesting. Dinner arrived then, delivered by a chef who appeared from what must have been a service entrance, set down plates of something that smelled incredible, and disappeared without a word. You have a private chef, Evelyn said. I have several staff members who know when to be invisible. Ezra picked up his fork. Eat. The wine deserves proper food. Did. The meal was perfect, each course designed to complement the wine, to enhance rather than compete. They talked about everything. Her training in France, his childhood in Sicily, the particular pleasure of finding a wine that exceeded even expert expectations. Somewhere around the third glass, Evelyn asked, "What do you want from me?" Really? Ezra set down his fork, studied her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Honestly, I don't know yet. Last night, I saw a woman who looked at wine the way I look at art, like it was sacred, like it mattered more than safety or sense. I wanted to know if that was real or just the champagne. And you're more dangerous than I expected. Me. You. He reached across the table, caught her hand. His thumb traced her knuckles, calloused and warm. You look at me like I'm not a monster. Like the things I've done don't matter. That's dangerous, Evelyn. For both of us. Maybe I don't think you're a monster. Then you're naive. Or maybe, Evelyn said, emboldened by wine and something deeper. I understand that monsters are just people who want beautiful things and don't care about the rules. Ezra's grip tightened on her hand. Don't romanticize me. I've hurt people. I'll hurt you eventually. It's what I do. Then hurt me. The words came out before she could stop them, reckless and true. But let me have this first. Let me have one perfect night where I'm not careful. Where I'm not thinking about consequences or tomorrow or anything except this wine and this moment and you. Something flickered in his eyes. Want and warning in equal measure. One night. One night, Evelyn agreed. She was lying again. They both knew it. Hours later, after the wine was finished, after the chef had cleared the dishes, after they'd moved to the living room with its stolen Caravaggio and its view of the city, Ezra said, I have a proposition. Evelyn was curled on his sofa, pleasantly drunk, her shoes discarded somewhere near the door. That sounds ominous. Marcus's vineyard is failing. Badly. They're 6 months from bankruptcy. She sat up straighter. How do you know that? Because I make it my business to know things. And because I've been watching the Connecticut wine market for potential investments. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Suddenly all business. With the right investment, the right expertise, that vineyard could be extraordinary. The land is good. The location is good. Everything else is mismanagement. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm going to buy it. He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. Through a shell company, untraceable to me. And I'm going to hire you to run it. Evelyn's stomach dropped. What? Think about it. Marcus's family loses everything. You gain a vineyard. I gain a legitimate business to balance my less legitimate ones. Everyone wins. Except Marcus. Especially not Marcus. Ezra's smile was cold. He hurt you. He doesn't get to keep his family legacy after that. This is. Evelyn stood up, needing distance. This is insane. This is revenge. This is opportunity. He stood too, moved toward her with that predator's grace. You have the talent. I have the resources. Together, we could make something extraordinary. Together. Yes. What does together mean in this scenario? Whatever you want it to mean. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Business partners. Collaborators. Or more. His hand came up to cup her jaw, thumb brushing her lower lip. If you're brave enough. Evelyn's heart was racing. This was it. The moment where she should say no, should walk away, should choose safety over this beautiful, dangerous thing. I need time, she heard herself say. To think. To decide if I'm brave or just self-destructive. Take all the time you need. But Ezra didn't step back. The offer stands. The vineyard, the partnership, all of it. Whenever you're ready. And if I'm never ready, then you'll go home, block my number, and live a safe life. His thumb traced her jawline, gentle and possessive. But we both know you're not going to do that. You're very sure of yourself. I'm sure of you. He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. You want this. You want the danger. You want to see what happens when you stop being careful. You want me. You're arrogant. I'm right. Evelyn pulled back, forced herself to meet his eyes. One question. And I want the truth. Did you plan this? See me at the gala, research Marcus's vineyard. Set up this whole scenario. Ezra was quiet for a long moment. Then, yes. The honesty should have sent her running. Instead it felt like relief. Why? Because I saw you taste that Petrus like you were decoding the universe. Because you looked at wine the way I look at stolen art, like it was worth any price. Because I wanted to know if someone that passionate about one beautiful thing could understand my passion for another. He stepped back, gave her space. I won't lie to you, Evelyn. I'll steal from others. I'll manipulate markets and bend laws and do terrible things to terrible people. But I won't lie to you. Not about this. Not about us. There is no us. Not yet. You're impossible. I'm patient. He walked to a small table, picked up a folder she hadn't noticed. This is everything about the vineyard. Financial records, soil reports, production capacity. Take it home. Read it. Decide if revenge disguised as opportunity is something you can live with. Evelyn took the folder with shaking hands. And if I say no, then I enjoyed tonight, and I'll remember you as the woman who almost said yes. His smile was sad. But I think we both know what you're going to decide. The car ride home was silent. Evelyn clutched the folder like a lifeline, her mind spinning. She'd just had dinner with a criminal, drunk stolen wine, kissed him twice. And now she was considering a business partnership that was really just elaborate revenge dressed up as opportunity. She should call the FBI. Should tell them about the Caravaggio, the wine cellar, all of it. Instead, when she got home at 2 a.m, she opened the folder and started reading. By dawn, she'd made her decision. It was the worst decision she'd ever made. And she couldn't wait to make it. Chapter 3, Vineyard of Sin. 3 weeks later, Evelyn stood in the main house of what used to be the Harper family vineyard and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The sale had gone through faster than she'd thought possible. Marcus's family had been desperate, drowning in debt, facing foreclosure, willing to accept any offer that kept them from complete ruin. Ezra's shell company had swooped in with a price just high enough to clear their debts and just low enough to ensure they'd never recover. Marcus had called her 17 times during the negotiation period. She'd answered once, just to hear him beg. Evie, please. I know I fucked up, but this is my family's legacy. You can't just take it. I'm not taking anything, she'd said, voice cold as winter. A legitimate buyer made a legitimate offer. What happens next isn't my concern. Bullshit. I know you're behind this. You and that criminal you kissed. She'd hung up. Claire had sent texts ranging from apologetic to threatening to pathetic. Evelyn had blocked her after the fifth one mentioned lawyers. Their mother had called once, voice tight with something between horror and reluctant pride. I don't approve of your methods, she'd said. But your father would have loved watching Marcus's family lose everything. They always did make terrible wine. Now Evelyn walked through the vineyard house, renovated, modernized, stripped of everything that made it the Harper family home and rebuilt into something new. Something hers. Almost hers. What do you think? Ezra's voice came from behind her. He'd arrived an hour ago with his team. Contractors, designers, people who worked fast and didn't ask questions. I think it's exactly what we discussed. Evelyn turned to face him. 3 weeks since their dinner, and he'd been professional, distant, giving her space to make her decision. They'd communicated through lawyers and emails, all business, nothing personal. But the way he was looking at her now wasn't business at all. You look good here, he said quietly. Like you belong. I do belong here. This is mine now. Ours. The word hung between them, weighted with implications they hadn't discussed. The partnership agreement was clear. Ezra provided funding, Evelyn provided expertise. Profits split 60-40 in her favor. She had complete autonomy on all wine-related decisions. What the paperwork didn't cover was what happened after business hours. We should discuss the first vintage, Evelyn said, deflecting. I want to replace half the vines. The Pinot Noir stock is decent but uninspired. If we're going to make this vineyard legendary, we need better rootstock. From Burgundy ideally. But acquiring authentic Burgundy vines legally takes years and costs. I can have rootstock from Domaine de la Romani Conti here in 2 weeks, Ezra interrupted. Authentic, high quality, exactly what you need. Evelyn stared at him. That's impossible. Darcy guards their vines like state secrets. Nothing's impossible. It just takes the right connections. You mean illegal connections. I mean connections. He moved closer, and Evelyn's pulse quickened despite herself. Does it matter where the vines come from if the wine is extraordinary? Yes. Well, I don't know. She turned away, frustrated. This is exactly the problem. Every time I work with you, I'm compromising something. Ethics, legality, my own moral compass. Your moral compass, Ezra said, voice going cold, was fine with Marcus making mediocre wine while taking credit for your expertise. Was fine with marrying a man who saw your passion as a hobby. But suddenly importing rootstock is where you draw the line. That's different. How? Because Marcus was just selfish. She stopped, searching for words. You're dangerous. You make breaking rules feel reasonable. You make me want things I shouldn't want. Like what? Like this. Evelyn gestured at the vineyard, the house, everything. Like revenge disguised as success. Like stolen vines that will make award-winning wine. Like you. The admission hung in the air between them. Ezra's expression shifted, something hungry and triumphant moving behind his eyes. Finally. The truth. Don't look so smug. I'm not smug. I'm relieved. He closed the distance between them in 3 strides. Do you have any idea how difficult these 3 weeks have been? Staying professional when all I wanted was to call you at midnight and ask if you'd changed your mind about one dinner being enough. I thought you were being respectful. I was being strategic. Giving you space to make your choice without pressure. His hand came up to her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. But you made your choice. We're here. The vineyard is ours. So tell me, Evelyn, what happens now? You should step back. Should establish boundaries. Should make it clear this was business only. Instead, she kissed him. Not gentle, not tentative. Desperate and hungry. 3 weeks of tension exploding between them. Ezra made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer. His hands sliding into her hair, destroying the professional updo she'd carefully constructed that morning. They kissed like they were drowning, like the air between them had turned to wine and they were both addicted. Evelyn's hands found his shirt, started working buttons free, and Ezra laughed against her mouth. "Here," he murmured. "In the vineyard house. Everywhere." Evelyn pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "I want you everywhere. In this house, in the cellars, in the vines. I want to make this place ours in every possible way." "You're going to ruin me," Ezra said, but he was already lifting her, already moving toward the stairs. "Good," Evelyn replied. "Then we're even." They made love in the master bedroom with its view of the vines, afternoon sun streaming through windows that overlooked everything Marcus's family had lost. It should have felt wrong, triumphant sex in a house built on revenge. Instead, it felt like claiming territory. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets that still smelled new, Ezra traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "Tell me something true." "About what?" "About why you really said yes. And don't say the vineyard or the wine. Tell me the real reason." Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Because when I'm with you, I don't recognize myself. And that's terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure." "Is that good or bad?" "I don't know yet." She turned to face him, traced the scar through his eyebrow. "Who did this?" "My father. When I was 16 and told him I wanted to study art instead of joining the family business." "What was the family business?" "Nothing legal." His hand caught hers, held it against his face. "My grandfather ran wine shipments during Prohibition. My father expanded into other things. Gambling, smuggling, the usual immigrant crime family story. I was supposed to take over. But you chose art instead. I chose beauty over violence. Turns out I was still good at crime, just the white-collar kind. Do you regret it?" "No." He kissed her palm. "Violence is easy. Anyone can hurt people. But finding beauty, preserving it, understanding it, that takes something else. So you steal art to preserve it. I liberate art from people who don't deserve it. That's still theft. Is it theft if the current owner stole it first? If it was looted during a war? If it belongs in a museum but some billionaire keeps it in a vault?" He pulled her closer. "The art world is built on theft, Evelyn. I just don't pretend otherwise." She should have been disturbed. Should have seen red flags everywhere. Instead, she understood. The wine world was the same. Stolen techniques, appropriated terroir, centuries of colonizers claiming indigenous grapes as their own discovery. "We're going to hell," she said quietly. "Probably." Ezra's smile was wicked. "But we'll have excellent wine on the way down." The next 2 months were a blur of renovation and planting. Ezra delivered on his promise. Rootstock from Burgundy arrived in unmarked trucks, transported through channels Evelyn didn't ask about. The vines were perfect. Authentic Pinot Noir from old-growth DRC stock, the kind that would produce extraordinary grapes in 3 years. They hired a crew, mostly Ezra's people, vetted and loyal, who didn't ask questions about where the money came from. A wine master from Bordeaux who'd gotten blacklisted for creative accounting and needed a fresh start. A soil expert who'd done time for smuggling rare plants and knew more about terroir than anyone Evelyn had ever met. "Your staff," her mother said during one visit, "is a collection of criminals." "They're a collection of experts," Evelyn corrected, "who happen to have complicated pasts. Like your partner." "Like my partner." Her mother had sighed, resigned. "Your father would have loved this. The scandal, the revenge, the sheer audacity of it. He always said great wine required passion and a little bit of madness." "Is that approval?" "It's acknowledgement that you're more his daughter than I ever wanted to admit." The vineyard transformed under their attention. New equipment, new techniques, new vision. Evelyn worked 18-hour days, tasting soil, consulting on barrel selection, planning the layout of the new tasting room. Ezra was there for most of it, not interfering but present, watching her work with that same intensity he'd shown at their first dinner. Sometimes he'd disappear for days, returning with acquisitions he wouldn't discuss. art that appeared in the renovated house, wine that materialized in their new cellar. "Where do you go?" Evelyn asked once, lying in bed after another long day. "Places you don't want to know about. Try me. Geneva. Tokyo. Berlin. Anywhere there's something beautiful being wasted on someone who doesn't appreciate it." "You're stealing again." "I never stopped." He pulled her closer. "Does that bother you?" "Should have." But Evelyn was too tired, too drunk on success, too intoxicated by what they were building together. "Just don't get caught," she said instead. "I never do." That should have been her warning. The accident happened on a Tuesday in September. Evelyn was in the fermentation room, checking temperature controls, when she heard the scream. She ran outside to find chaos, workers shouting, someone calling 911, and a body lying still beneath new equipment that had been installed that morning. Miguel, 23, from Guatemala, who'd been working the harvest. Who'd been standing on a ladder adjusting the grape crusher when something had failed, sending him falling 12 feet onto concrete. There was blood. Too much blood. Evelyn knelt beside him, pressing her hands against the wound in his head, shouting for help that was already coming but wouldn't be fast enough. Miguel died before the ambulance arrived. The investigation lasted 3 days. OSHA inspectors crawled over the equipment. Police asked questions. Ezra's lawyers appeared, smooth and efficient, making sure nothing stuck to the vineyard officially. "Equipment failure," the final report concluded. "Faulty installation by the manufacturer. No negligence on the part of vineyard management." But Evelyn knew better. She'd seen the equipment specifications. Had noticed, too late, that the model they'd received wasn't the model she'd ordered. It was cheaper, lighter, not rated for industrial use. She found Ezra in his office at the house, going through paperwork. "The equipment," she said without preamble. "You substituted it." He didn't look up. "We needed to stay under budget. So you bought substandard equipment. And a man died. An unfortunate accident." "Bullshit." Evelyn slammed her hands on his desk. "Don't insult me by calling it an accident. You cut corners. You bought cheaper equipment from some black market contact. And Miguel paid the price." Ezra finally looked up, his face cold. "Would you like to explain that to OSHA? Would you like to tell them where the money for this vineyard came from? Where half our equipment came from? 'Cause we can do that, Evelyn. We can be completely honest. See how that works out." She stared at him, this man she'd been sleeping with, building dreams with, falling for despite every warning sign. "You're going to cover it up." "I already have. Miguel's family will receive a substantial settlement, more than they'd get from any lawsuit. The equipment will be replaced with proper models. This vineyard will continue operating." "A man died." "Yes." Ezra came around the desk. "And that's terrible. And I regret it. But what would you have me do? Shut down everything we've built? Turn myself into the police? Destroy your dream because of one mistake?" "It wasn't a mistake. It was negligence. It was a calculated risk that didn't work out." His voice was hard now, all business. "This is the world you chose, Evelyn. This is what it costs to build something from nothing using money that comes from nowhere. Sometimes people get hurt. I didn't choose this. You did. The moment you said yes to dinner. The moment you signed those papers. The moment you let me kiss you in that bedroom upstairs." He gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You knew what I was. What this would be. You don't get to act surprised when the monster shows his teeth." Evelyn wanted to argue. Wanted to say she hadn't known, hadn't understood, hadn't agreed to this. But that would be a lie. She'd known. Maybe not the specifics, but the essence. She'd known Ezra cut corners and bent laws and didn't count the cost when he wanted something. She'd known and she'd chosen him anyway. "Miguel's family," she said quietly. "The settlement. I want to double it. Done. And I want proper equipment. Everything. No more substitutions." "Agreed. And I want..." She stopped, tears finally coming. I want to go back to 3 months ago and make a different choice. Ezra's expression softened. No, you don't. How do you know? Because if you really wanted that, you'd be walking away right now instead of negotiating terms. He pulled her close, and Evelyn let him, hating herself for it. You want this, Evelyn. You want the vineyard and the wine and me. You just don't want to pay the price. Is this the price? Someone dies and we cover it up. Sometimes. Other times the price is different. But there's always a price. They stood there in his office, holding each other while sirens wailed in the distance. Another inspection, another round of questions they'd deflect with lawyers and money. That night, Evelyn drank half a bottle of their first vintage. Still young, still developing, but already showing promise. She sat in the cellar alone and thought about Miguel, about compromise, about how many deaths could be written off as the cost of doing business. When Ezra found her at midnight, she was on her second bottle. Come to bed, he said gently. I can't. You can't stay here all night. Why not? This is what I built, right? This is my dream. Might as well live in it. He sat beside her on the cold cellar floor. It wasn't your fault. It was our fault. We cut corners. We took risks. A man died because we wanted to save money. A man died because of a tragic accident, which we've addressed, which won't happen again. How many times? Evelyn turned to face him. How many tragic accidents are acceptable? How many Miguels before we admit what we're doing is wrong? There is no wrong, Ezra said. Only choices and consequences. We chose to build something beautiful. Miguel's death is a consequence. Terrible one. But it doesn't negate what we're creating. That's sociopath logic. It's realistic logic. He took the bottle from her hand, drank. You want to know the truth. The real truth. This vineyard will produce wines that critics weep over. Vintages that will be studied and coveted for generations. Hundreds of people will be employed here over the years. The wine will bring joy to thousands. And yes, one man died in the process. Is that acceptable? Well, is it the price we paid? Yes. I don't know if I can live with that. Then leave. He said it without anger. Walk away. I'll buy out your share. You'll be free of this, of me, of everything. Evelyn looked at the bottle in his hand. Their wine, their creation, proof that something beautiful could come from something rotten. I can't, she whispered. I know. He pulled her close, and they sat on the cellar floor surrounded by bottles that would outlast them both, drinking wine that tasted like success and sin in equal measure. Later, much later, they made love against the wine racks, desperate and rough, like they were trying to fuck away the guilt. Didn't work. But it felt like absolution anyway. Or maybe just another compromise in a long line of compromises they'd been making since the moment they met. Afterward, Ezra carried her upstairs to bed and held her while she cried. I'm not a good man, he said into her hair. I told you that at the beginning. I'll hurt people. I'll hurt you. But I'll also give you everything you've ever wanted. And that will have to be enough. What if it's not? Then you're smarter than I thought. But Evelyn knew, lying there in the dark in the house built on revenge, in the bed they'd christened with blood on their hands, that it would be enough. Because she'd tasted the wine. Had seen what they could build together. And some things once you've had them you can't give back. Even if they cost you your soul. Miguel's funeral was held 3 days later. Ezra didn't attend. Too risky, his lawyers said. But he sent flowers and a check that made the widow cry. Evelyn went, dressed in black, and stood at the back of the church while prayers were said in Spanish and a young family mourned. Miguel's wife was 21. They had a daughter, barely 2 years old, who kept asking where Papa was. After the service, the wife approached Evelyn. Thank you, she said in halting English. For the money. For everything. Miguel loved working at the vineyard. He said it was beautiful. He said you were building something important. Evelyn wanted to confess. Wanted to say it was her fault, that cheap equipment and cut corners had killed her husband. That important wasn't worth a life. Instead, she said, He was a good worker. I'm so sorry for your loss. The lie tasted like ash. That night, drunk again, Evelyn told Ezra, I'm in love with you. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, don't be too late. Evelyn, I know what you are. I know what we've done. I know this is toxic and wrong and probably going to destroy me. She turned to face him in the dark bedroom. But I'm in love with you anyway. And I think I have been since you kissed me at the gala. And I think that makes me as much of a monster as you are. Ezra pulled her close, his hand tangling in her hair. You're not a monster. Then what am I? Mine. He kissed her hard and possessive. You're mine, Evelyn. And I'm yours. And we're both going to hell. But at least we'll go together. They made love with a desperation that felt like drowning. And when Evelyn came, crying his name, she tasted salt and wine and the particular sweetness of damnation. The next morning, inspectors cleared the vineyard for operation. The wine continued aging in barrels, oblivious to guilt or grief. And Evelyn Harper, master sommelier, architect of her own downfall, went back to work building something beautiful on a foundation of bones. 3 months later, their first vintage won a regional award. 6 months after that, Wine Spectator did a feature on the vineyard's transformation. Within a year, Harper Vineyard was producing wines that critics called transcendent, and the best American Pinot Noir in a generation. No one mentioned Miguel. No one except Evelyn, who poured a glass of every new vintage and whispered an apology to a ghost who couldn't hear her anymore. And Ezra, who held her when she cried and reminded her that greatness always had a price. And that they'd both agreed to pay it. Chapter 4, Wine and Blood. 2 years after Miguel's death. The FBI came on a Wednesday in October, when the vines were heavy with harvest and the air smelled like earth and promise. Evelyn was in the barrel room, checking the second-year vintage. A Pinot Noir that was developing notes of cherry and smoke that made her chest tight with pride. This was going to be their masterpiece. Critics were already begging for advanced tastings. She heard the commotion before she saw them. Raised voices, the terse commands of people who were used to being obeyed. When she emerged from the cellar, squinting in the bright autumn sun, there were 6 black SUVs parked in the circular drive and at least a dozen agents swarming the property. Evelyn Harper. A woman in a dark suit approached, badge already out. Special Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. We have a warrant to search the premises. Evelyn's stomach dropped, but years of sommelier training kept her face composed. On what grounds? Suspicion of money laundering, receipt of stolen goods, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Agent Chen's expression was professional but not unkind. We're also looking for Ezra Castellano. Is he on the property? No. The lie came easily. Ezra was in the main house in the office, going through import documents for their next acquisition. I haven't seen him in days. We're business partners, Agent Chen. Not joined at the hip. Business partners who share a bedroom. So they'd been watching. For how long? Evelyn's mind raced, cataloging everything in the house, the cellar, the office that could be incriminating. Is that illegal now? No. But the way your vineyard is funded might be. Agent Chen gestured to her team. We'll try to be respectful of your operation, Ms. Harper. But we will be thorough. They were. For 6 hours, federal agents tore through everything. They cataloged wine bottles, photographed equipment, seized computers and files. They brought in specialists to examine the rootstock. Looking, Evelyn realized with cold dread, for evidence that the vines had been illegally imported. She watched them work and said nothing, her lawyer, one of Ezra's lawyers really, standing beside her with a hand on her arm whenever she looked like she might speak. Don't engage, he murmured. Don't answer questions. Don't volunteer anything. Where's Ezra? She whispered back. Gone. He left through the service entrance 20 minutes ago. They won't find him. Course he'd run. That's what Ezra did. Appeared when convenient, disappeared when dangerous. Evelyn felt something cold settle in her chest. Not quite betrayal, but close enough to taste bitter. Agent Chen found her again around sunset, when the agents were starting to pack up evidence into trucks. "You seem like a smart woman, Ms. Harper," she said, conversational. "Master sommelier, impressive credentials, self-made success story. What are you doing mixed up with someone like Castellano?" "Making wine," Evelyn replied. "With stolen money. With investment capital. All documented, all clean. My lawyers can provide." "Your lawyers can provide papers that Castellano's people created to make dirty money look clean. We know how this works." Agent Chen pulled out a photograph, held it up. "Recognize this." It was the Caravaggio. The one that had hung in Ezra's penthouse 2 years ago. "Should I?" "It was recovered from a warehouse in Queens last month. Stolen from a private collection in Sicily in 2003. Worth approximately $40 million. Agent Chen's eyes were sharp. "The warehouse was leased by a shell company that traces back to your vineyard's parent corporation." Evelyn's mouth went dry. "I don't know anything about that." "Really?" "Because we have security footage of you at Ezra Castellano's residence in Tribeca on multiple occasions. The same residence where this painting was displayed for nearly 3 years." Agent Chen leaned in. "You're going to tell me you never saw it? Never asked where it came from?" "I plead the fifth." "Smart choice." Agent Chen tucked the photo away. "But here's what I want you to understand, Ms. Harper. Ezra Castellano has been a person of interest in 17 different federal investigations over the last decade. Art theft, antiquities smuggling, money laundering, possible connections to organized crime in 3 countries. And every single time he gets away. You know why?" Evelyn said nothing. "Because he's good at insulating himself. Good at finding smart, ambitious people and making them complicit. Good at ensuring that if anyone goes down, it won't be him." Agent Chen's voice softened. "You seem like a decent person who made some bad choices. Work with us. Tell us what you know. Help us build a case against Castellano, and we can protect you." "I want my lawyer." "You have your lawyer. Then we're done talking." Agent Chen studied her for a long moment. "Loyalty is admirable, Ms. Harper. But misplaced loyalty will land you in federal prison. Think about that." They left as the sun set, taking boxes of evidence and leaving the vineyard feeling violated and exposed. Workers stood in clusters, whispering. The new harvest manager, a woman from Sonoma who'd asked very few questions when Evelyn hired her, approached cautiously. "Are we shutting down?" "No," Evelyn said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "We're continuing exactly as planned. The harvest needs to come in. The second vintage needs bottling. Business as usual." "Are you sure that's business as usual?" Evelyn repeated, harder this time. "Because what else was there?" "Stop now, admit defeat. Let the FBI and Marcus and everyone who'd whispered that she couldn't handle this be proven right. She'd rather burn." Ezra didn't call that night or the next. By the 3rd day, Evelyn was oscillating between fury and fear. The FBI was building a case. The vineyard was under scrutiny. And the man who'd gotten her into this had vanished like smoke. On the 4th day he appeared. Not at the vineyard, too obvious. He sent a car with an address in the Catskills, 3 hours north. Evelyn should have refused. Should have stayed put, talked to lawyers, protected herself. Instead she got in the car. The address led to a cabin on a private lake, isolated and expensive. Ezra was sitting on the dock when she arrived. Expensive suit traded for jeans and a dark sweater. He looked younger like this, less dangerous, though Evelyn knew that was an illusion. "You ran," she said without preamble. "I retreated strategically. You left me there. With the FBI. With no warning. You had lawyers. You were fine." He stood, turned to face her. "And if I'd stayed, it would have been worse. For both of us." "How considerate." "Evelyn. Don't." She held up a hand. "Don't try to explain this away. Don't tell me it was necessary or strategic or for my own good. You ran, Ezra. You left me to face the consequences alone. I left you clean. His voice was hard now. If I'd been there, they would have arrested us both. Now they have nothing connecting you to anything illegal except proximity to me. Your lawyers can argue you were a victim. That I deceived you, manipulated you, used your vineyard to launder money without your knowledge. Is that what happened? You know it's not. Then what am I supposed to tell them? Nothing. He moved closer. You tell them nothing. You plead the fifth. You let your lawyers handle it. And you wait. Wait for what? For this to blow over. For the FBI to realize they don't have enough evidence. For life to continue. He reached for her, but Evelyn stepped back. They showed me a photo of the Caravaggio. The one from your penthouse. I've relocated it. It was in a warehouse. Traced back to our vineyard's parent company. Which has 6 layers of shell corporations between it and anything actionable. They can't prove I own that warehouse. Can't prove you knew about it. Can't prove anything except that expensive art was stored in an expensive location. Ezra's smile was cold. I've been doing this for 15 years, Evelyn. I know how to stay ahead of them. A man died building this vineyard, Evelyn said quietly. Miguel. Remember him. And now the FBI is investigating us. And you're standing here telling me to wait it out like this is just an inconvenience. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry. That I regret the choices we made. Some of them, yes. But I don't regret us. I don't regret what we've built. Even if it destroys us. It won't. You don't know that. I know, Ezra said, pulling her close despite her resistance, that we've created something extraordinary. That vineyard produces wines critics dream about. Your name is respected. Your reputation is growing. And yes, it's built on compromise and questionable money and one terrible accident. But it's real, Evelyn. It's ours. And I'll burn the world down before I let them take it from us. She should have pulled away. Should have seen this for what it was. A criminal protecting his investment with pretty words. Instead she kissed him. Desperate and angry and afraid. She kissed him like she was drowning and he was air. He responded immediately. His hands in her hair, pulling her closer, and they stumbled backward into the cabin. They made love on the floor in front of the fireplace. Rough and urgent, more battle than romance. Evelyn bit his shoulder hard enough to leave marks. He left bruises on her hips. They fucked like they were trying to hurt each other or save each other or maybe both. Afterward, lying tangled together, Ezra said, "I love you." It was the first time he'd said it. Evelyn wanted to say it back. Wanted to believe that love was enough to justify everything they'd done, everyone they'd hurt. Instead, she said, "I know." The FBI investigation continued for 6 months. They interviewed staff, subpoenaed records, brought in forensic accountants to trace money through the labyrinth of shell companies Ezra had created. They interviewed Marcus, who gleefully provided every suspicion he'd ever had, though nothing provable. They interviewed Claire, who knew nothing useful but enjoyed the attention. Through it all, Evelyn maintained the same story. She was a sommelier hired to run a vineyard. She'd been in a relationship with the investor, yes, but knew nothing about his other business dealings. The equipment that killed Miguel had been purchased through proper channels. The substitution was a manufacturer error, already litigated and settled. The vines were expensive but legally acquired. She had import documents to prove it. The documents were forgeries, but excellent ones. The FBI knew it. Evelyn knew they knew it. But proof and certainty were different things. Agent Chen kept showing up, kept asking questions, kept pushing. "He's going to leave you holding the bag," she said during one visit. "When this gets too hot, Castellano will disappear and you'll be the one facing charges. Help us now before it's too late." "I have nothing to help you with," Evelyn replied. Became a refrain. Prayer. A lie she told so often it started to feel like truth. Meanwhile, the vineyard thrived. Their second vintage won 3 international awards. Wine Spectator called it a revelation, proof that American winemakers can compete with Burgundy's finest. Orders came pouring in. Restaurants fought for allocation. Collectors paid premium prices for futures. Evelyn should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt hollow. She worked 18-hour days because stopping meant thinking. Thinking meant remembering Miguel's widow. Meant acknowledging that every bottle they sold was built on blood and lies. Meant facing the fact that she'd become exactly what Agent Chen said. Complicit, compromised, one piece of evidence away from federal prison. At night, when Ezra visited, careful now, always careful, checking for surveillance, they made love with a desperation that felt like goodbye. What if they arrest me? Evelyn asked one night, lying in the dark. They won't. But what if? Then I'll get you the best defense team money can buy. I'll call in every favor I have. I'll move heaven and earth to get you out. Would you turn yourself in? If it meant I went free. Ezra was quiet for a long moment. No. The honesty should have hurt. Instead, it felt like relief. At least he wasn't lying. I wouldn't ask you to, Evelyn said. I made my choices. I knew what you were. I chose this anyway. You could still walk away. Cooperate with the FBI. Claim I manipulated you. They'd probably believe it. Young, talented sommelier seduced by older, sophisticated criminal. Makes a good story. Is that what happened? You know it's not. Then I'm not walking away. She turned to face him in the dark. I'm in this. Whatever comes. Even if it destroys me. It won't come to that. Promise. I promise. Another lie. They were both so good at them now. The breakthrough, or breakdown depending on perspective, came on a Monday in March. Evelyn was in the tasting room, hosting a group of sommeliers from New York, when her phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking. Federal raid on Soho Gallery nets $200 million in stolen art. Ezra Castellano named as person of interest. Her stomach dropped. She excused herself, stepped outside, called Ezra's number. It went straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same result. Called his lawyer instead. Victoria Chen answered on the first ring. I was just about to call you, she said, her voice tight. Don't go home. Don't go to the vineyard office. Don't access any shared accounts. The FBI is moving and moving fast. Where's Ezra? I don't know. He's not answering. But Evelyn, listen to me carefully. Whatever happens next, you know nothing. You're shocked and betrayed. You thought he was a legitimate investor. You had no knowledge of any illegal activities. Do you understand? Where is he? Evelyn repeated. I don't know, Oz. But if I had to guess, he's already out of the country. He has contingency plans for this exact scenario. Plans that don't include you. The words hit like a slap. He wouldn't just leave. He absolutely would. And he probably has. Ezra Castellano is many things, but stupid isn't one of them. The minute the FBI closed in, he vanished. That's what he does. Victoria's voice softened. I'm sorry, Evelyn. I know you care about him. But you need to protect yourself now. He's gone, and he's taken everything that could incriminate him, which means I'm the only one left to prosecute. Yes. Evelyn ended the call and stood in the vineyard parking lot, surrounded by vines she'd planted and dreams she'd built, and felt everything crumble. Her phone buzzed again. Agent Chen, we need to talk. I can help you, but only if you move fast. She should have called back immediately. Should have taken the deal, any deal that would keep her out of prison. Instead, she went back inside and finished the tasting. Smiled at the sommeliers. Discussed terroir and barrel aging and the subtle notes of cherry and earth in their reserve Pinot. Played the role of successful winemaker, as if her entire world wasn't collapsing around her. Because this was what she had left. The wine, the vineyard, the legacy they'd built from revenge and blood. And she'd be damned if she let it go without a fight. Ezra called 3 days later from a blocked number at 2 a.m. I'm sorry, he said without preamble. Where are you? Somewhere without extradition treaties. Somewhere safe. Safe for you, Evelyn said bitterly. I'm still here, Ezra. Still facing the FBI. Still cleaning up your mess. I know. And I'm. Don't say you're sorry again. Sorry doesn't help me. Sorry doesn't make the agent stop showing up at the vineyard. Sorry doesn't. Her voice cracked. You promised. You said it wouldn't come to this. I know. Is that all you have to say? I know. I'm about to lose everything and you're calling from God knows where to say you're sorry and you know. What do you want me to say? His voice was hard now, defensive. That I'll turn myself in. That I'll come back and face prosecution so you don't have to. We both know that's not happening. Why not? Because I have 20 years of crimes to answer for, and you have too. Because if I go down for life. Because, he stopped. Because I'm not brave enough to save you, Evelyn. I'm selfish and calculating and I always have been. You knew that. I did. She laughed, sharp and bitter. I absolutely did. Just thought. I don't know what I thought. That love would make you different. That I was special enough for you to risk everything. You are special. You're the only real thing I've had in a decade. But that doesn't change what I am. A coward. Yes. The honesty was worse than a lie. The FBI wants me to cooperate, Evelyn said. Tell them everything I know. Help them build a case against you in exchange for immunity. Will you? I don't know. She looked around the cellar where she'd taken his call, surrounded by bottles that represented every compromise she'd made. Part of me wants to watch you burn the way I'm burning. But then I think about what we built here and I. Keep the vineyard, Ezra interrupted. Whatever happens, fight for that. It's clean enough to survive scrutiny. The shell companies are structured to protect you. My lawyers will make sure the FBI can't touch your ownership. You'll lose me, but you'll keep everything else. How generous. It's not generosity. He paused. It's the only thing I can give you. The only way I can make this right. It doesn't make anything right. I know. But it's something. They were both quiet for a long moment. Then Ezra said, I love you. I know that doesn't help. I know it doesn't change anything. But it's true. I love you too, Evelyn whispered. And I hate you for making me love you. And I hate myself for not being able to stop. If I could do it differently. But you wouldn't. If we went back to that night at the gala, you'd make the same choices. You'd still kiss me, still offer me the vineyard, still build this beautiful toxic thing between us. Because that's who you are. Yes. Then we have nothing left to say. Evelyn. She hung up. The phone didn't ring again. Agent Chen showed up the next morning with an offer. Full immunity in exchange for testimony. Everything Evelyn knew about Ezra's operations, his contacts, his methods. Help them build the case they'd been chasing for a decade. You'll walk away from this, Chen said. Keep the vineyard, keep your reputation, keep your life. All you have to do is tell the truth. Evelyn looked at the paperwork spread across her kitchen table. Looked at the vineyard through the window. Vines she'd planted, harvest she'd planned, wine she'd created from nothing. Built on blood and lies and a love that had destroyed them both. I need time to think, she said. We don't have time. Castellano is in the wind. Every day we wait, the trail gets colder. Decide now, Ms. Harper. Save yourself or go down with him. Should have been an easy choice. It wasn't. Give me 24 hours. Chen hesitated, then nodded. 24 hours. After that, the deal expires and we proceed with prosecution. Of you, of the vineyard, of everything. After she left, Evelyn went to the cellar and opened a bottle of their first vintage. The one made from stolen vines and questionable money. The one that had won awards and made critics weep. Tasted like everything she'd ever wanted. And everything she'd lost in the getting. She poured a second glass for Ezra, even though he'd never drink it. Set it across from her at the small tasting table. I don't know what to do, she said to the empty chair. To the ghost of the man who'd ruined her life and given her everything at the same time. Tell me what to do. The wine had no answers. But as Evelyn sat there drinking alone, she realized that maybe there weren't any right answers. Maybe there was just the choice she could live with, and the choice she couldn't. And maybe, in the end, that was the only truth that mattered. Chapter 5. The Fall of Marcus and Claire. Evelyn didn't sleep that night. She sat in the cellar until dawn, surrounded by bottles that represented 2 years of work, compromise and blood. The immunity deal sat on the table beside her, unsigned. 24 hours to decide whether to save herself or protect a man who'd abandoned her to federal prosecution. Should have been simple. It wasn't. At 7 in the morning her phone rang. Unknown number. Don't do it. Victoria Chen's voice, tight with urgency. Don't sign that immunity deal. Why not? Ezra's gone. The FBI has evidence. I'm looking at federal charges, which they can't prove without your testimony. Evelyn, listen to me. I've been Ezra's lawyer for 8 years. I know how he operates. The shell companies protecting the vineyard are airtight. The money trail is clean enough. Without you confirming their suspicions, they have nothing actionable against you personally. Agent Chen said. Agent Chen is bluffing. They want you scared enough to flip. But their case against you is circumstantial at best. Proximity to Ezra isn't a crime. Being in a relationship with him isn't a crime. They need proof you knowingly participated in money laundering, and they don't have it. Evelyn's head throbbed. So you're saying refuse the deal? I'm saying wait. Don't give them anything. Force them to prove their case, which they can't do. In 3 months, this goes away and you keep everything. The vineyard, your freedom, your reputation. And Ezra gets away like he always does. Victoria paused. I know you're angry with him. You have every right to be. But signing that deal doesn't just hurt him. It destroys you too. You'd be admitting to crimes, Evelyn. Federal crimes. That immunity deal means confessing to conspiracy, money laundering, receipt of stolen goods. Even if you avoid prison, that follows you forever. What if they arrest me? They won't. Not without more evidence. Trust me. Evelyn wanted to believe that silence was protection, that Ezra's lawyers were as good as they claimed, that everything would somehow work out. But she'd trusted before, and it had cost Miguel his life. I'll think about it, she said and hung up. The decision was made for her 3 hours later, when Marcus showed up at the vineyard. Evelyn was in the fermentation room, checking acidity levels, when she heard raised voices at the entrance. She emerged to find Marcus arguing with security. His face red with champagne courage or genuine rage, hard to tell which. I need to talk to Evelyn, he was shouting. I have information the FBI needs to hear. Her blood went cold. Let him in, she told security. Ms. Harper, I don't think. Let him in. Marcus swaggered onto the property like he owned it, looking around at the renovated buildings and pristine vines with obvious bitterness. Nice place, he said. Built on my family's legacy with stolen money. How does it feel, Evie? Sleeping with a criminal, destroying lives. Is there a point to this visit, or did you just come to be pathetic? His face flushed darker. I've been talking to the FBI. Telling them everything I know about you and Castellano. The timing of the purchase, the suspicious funding, all of it. You don't know anything. I know enough. I know the vineyard was bought through shell companies. I know equipment appeared that shouldn't be available on the legitimate market. I know a worker died under suspicious circumstances. Miguel died in an accident. OSHA cleared us. OSHA cleared you because Castellano's lawyers buried the truth. Marcus moved closer, and Evelyn could smell whiskey on his breath. But I've been doing research, talking to people. That equipment was substituted. Cheaper models, black market acquisition. And you knew. You had to know. Evelyn's heart hammered, but she kept her face neutral. You're drunk and you're desperate. Security can escort you. Claire told me everything. The world tilted. What? Claire. Your sister. The one you've been punishing for 2 years by stealing our family's business and flaunting your criminal boyfriend. Marcus's smile was vicious. She came to me last week. Guilty conscience, apparently. Said she'd been talking to some of Castellano's people, trying to help you and learn things. Terrible things. You're lying. Am I? She knows about the Caravaggio in his penthouse. Knows about the wine shipments from France that don't have proper documentation. Knows about the consulting fees paid to officials in customs. She kept records, Evie. Photos. Everything. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Why would Claire? Because she feels guilty. Because she actually cares about you despite everything. I don't know and I don't care. He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. But she gave me this. And I gave it to the FBI this morning. The photo showed documents, shipping manifests, payment records, correspondence between Ezra and various contacts in Europe. All dated within the last 2 years. All implicating the vineyard in illegal importation. Where did she get this? Apparently Castellano kept records at the vineyard office. In a safe he thought was secure. Claire got the combination from his assistant. Some woman she befriended, pretended to sympathize with. Took photos of everything before you even knew she'd been there. The room spun. Claire had been here. Had accessed Ezra's office. Had stolen evidence and given it to Marcus, who'd given it to the FBI. Why? Evelyn whispered. Why would she do this? Because you destroyed her life. Marcus's voice was cold. After we broke up, after you humiliated us both at that gala, Claire couldn't find work. Couldn't show her face in our social circles. Everyone called her a homewrecker, a betrayer. She lost everything, Evie. And you just kept winning. She slept with my fiancé. And you slept with a criminal and stole my family's vineyard and built an empire on blood money. Who's worse? He pocketed his phone. Claire wanted revenge. I wanted justice. The FBI wanted evidence. Everyone wins. Except me. Especially you. Marcus turned to leave, then stopped. That immunity deal they offered. Take it. Cooperate. Because with what Claire gave them, they don't need your testimony anymore. They have everything. The only question is whether you go down fighting or save yourself. He left, and Evelyn stood frozen in the fermentation room, surrounded by wine that suddenly tasted like ash. She called Victoria immediately. Claire has evidence. Documents from Ezra's office. She gave them to Marcus, who gave them to the FBI. They have proof, real proof, of illegal operations. Silence. Then. Fuck. Is that your legal opinion? That's my accurate assessment of the situation. How much did she access? I don't know. Marcus showed me one photo. Shipping manifests, payment records. If she got into the main safe. Evelyn's voice trailed off. They both knew what was in that safe. Everything Ezra had been careful to keep off computers, out of emails. Physical evidence of 2 years of illegal operations. Okay, Victoria said, her voice taking on that lawyerly calm. Babe, this changes things. We need to. I need to talk to Claire. That's a terrible idea. I need to know why. I need to hear her say it to my face. Evelyn, anything you say to her can be used. I don't care. She was already grabbing her keys. Give me her address. I can't. Victoria. Please. Long pause. Then an address in Brooklyn and a warning. Don't confess to anything. Don't threaten her. Just listen. And for God's sake, don't do anything stupid. Evelyn hung up and drove to Brooklyn with her hands shaking on the wheel. Claire's apartment was small and shabby, a far cry from the lifestyle she'd enjoyed when dating Marcus. Evelyn knocked, and her sister answered with a wine glass in hand and guilt written across her face. Evie! Why? Evelyn pushed past her into the apartment. Why would you do this? I know we're not close, I know you hate me, but this? Giving evidence to the FBI. Trying to put me in prison. Claire closed the door, set down her wine glass with shaking hands. You destroyed my life. You slept with my fiancé. And you took everything from me. Claire's voice cracked. After the gala, after everyone found out, I couldn't get work. Couldn't date anyone without them Googling me and finding the scandal. Mom stopped talking to me. Friends disappeared. I lost everything, Evelyn. While you got a vineyard and awards and that criminal boyfriend who looks at you like you're precious. So you decided to destroy me too. That's your solution. I decided to make you face consequences for once in your perfect fucking life. Claire's eyes were red-rimmed, whether from crying or drinking unclear. You always got everything. Dad's approval, the family talent, the career. And when you lost Marcus, you just found someone richer and more powerful and took his family's vineyard as revenge. You didn't lose anything. You just kept winning. I lost you, Evelyn said quietly. My sister. The person who was supposed to be on my side. I was never on your side. You were always too perfect for me to compete with. So you gave the FBI evidence that could put me in federal prison. That could cost me everything I've built. That could destroy the only thing I have left. You have Castellano. Ezra's gone. He ran the second the FBI closed in. I'm here alone, facing charges because of evidence you stole. Evidence you gave to my ex-fiancé so he could have his revenge too. Claire looked away. I didn't think they'd actually arrest you. Thought. I don't know what I thought. That you'd cooperate, get immunity. That Castellano would be the one to face consequences. You thought wrong. I'm sorry. Don't. Evelyn's voice was cold. Don't apologize. Don't pretend you care. You made your choice. Now I have to live with the consequences. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. One question. Was any of it real? Our relationship, our childhood, anything? Or was I always just the competition? Claire's face crumpled. I loved you. I did. But I hated you more. Well, Evelyn said, at least you're honest. She left before Claire could respond, before the tears threatening to fall could actually spill, before she could do something stupid like forgive her sister or beg for help that wouldn't come. Back at the vineyard, Agent Chen was waiting. We need to talk, she said, gesturing to her car. Privately. Evelyn got in, too exhausted to argue. Your sister gave us quite a gift, Chen said once they were alone. Shipping manifests, payment records, correspondence with known smugglers. It's enough to bring charges. Against the vineyard, against you personally, against everyone involved. So arrest me. I don't want to arrest you. I want to give you one more chance. Chen pulled out new paperwork. Modified immunity deal. You testify against Castellano, you help us understand the network he's built, you give us everything. In exchange we drop all charges. You keep the vineyard, you keep your freedom, you start over. And if I refuse? Then we proceed with prosecution. You, the vineyard, everyone on your staff who might have known. We'll make examples, Ms. Harper. We'll ensure that anyone thinking about working with people like Castellano understands the cost. Evelyn stared at the paperwork. At the signature line that represented survival or destruction. How long do I have? 24 hours. Again. But this is the last time. Tomorrow at noon, you're either cooperating or you're being arrested. What if I don't know enough to help you? What if Ezra kept me in the dark about most of his operations? Then you tell us what you do know, and we work from there. Chen's voice softened. Look, I get it. You fell in love with the wrong person. Made bad choices for what felt like good reasons. But this is your chance to make one right choice. To save yourself before it's too late. By betraying him. By saving yourself. Evelyn took the paperwork and got out of the car without responding. That night, she opened a bottle of their third vintage. Still aging, not ready for release, but she needed to taste it. Needed to know if everything they'd built was worth the cost. It was extraordinary. Complex, layered, showing hints of what it would become in another year. This was going to be their masterpiece. The wine that established Harper Vineyard as world-class. built on stolen vines and blood money and a love that had destroyed them both. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, sign the deal. Save yourself. You deserve better than going down for him. Then Claire, I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Then Victoria, whatever you decide, I'm here. But decide soon. Nothing from Ezra. Because he was gone, vanished to whatever country would shield him from American law, leaving her alone with impossible choices. Evelyn poured a second glass and set it across from her, like she'd been doing for weeks now. Talking to ghosts. Talking to the man who'd given her everything and taken everything in return. What do I do? She whispered to the empty chair. Tell me what to do. But she knew. Had known since Agent Chan had shown her that first photo of the Caravaggio. Since Miguel had died on cheap equipment. Since the moment she'd said yes to dinner with a beautiful, dangerous man who'd promised her the world. Some choices once made couldn't be unmade. Some prices once agreed to had to be paid. At 11:30 that night, Evelyn called Agent Chen. I'll testify, she said. I'll tell you everything I know. But I have conditions. I'm listening. The vineyard stays operational. My staff keeps their jobs. And Claire doesn't face charges. Whatever she did because I drove her to it. That's surprisingly generous. It's practical. She's my sister. She's broken and bitter and she made terrible choices, but so did I. She doesn't deserve to go down for my sins. Silence. Then, agreed. All of it. We'll have papers drawn up by morning. One more thing. Yes. I wanted on record that I loved him. That this wasn't manipulation or coercion. I made my choices with open eyes, and I'd make them again. Why does that matter? Because, Evelyn said, I need someone to know the truth, even if no one believes it. The news broke 3 days later. Master sommelier cooperates in federal case against art thief Ezra Castellano. The wine world exploded. Evelyn Harper, darling of critics, builder of one of America's finest vineyards, had been in business with a criminal, had used illegal money to fund her success, had knowingly participated in smuggling operations, and now she was testifying against him. Her phone filled with messages, some supportive, most horrified. Her mother called, voice tight. Tell me you did the right thing. I did the only thing I could, Evelyn replied. Marcus sent a single text. You made the right choice. She deleted it without responding. Claire showed up at the vineyard a week later, tentative and broken. I'm sorry, she said at the door. I'm so sorry. I never meant. I know. Evelyn didn't invite her in. Thank you for the evidence. It probably saved my life. But it destroyed everything else. No. I did that myself. Long before you got involved. Evelyn leaned against the doorframe, suddenly exhausted. Go home, Claire. Rebuild your life. Forget about me and this vineyard and all of it. Can you forgive me? Eventually, maybe. But not today. Claire left crying and Evelyn went back to work. Because work was all she had left. The vineyard, the wine, the legacy built on blood and compromise. At night, alone in the cellar, she still poured 2 glasses. Still set one across from an empty chair. I betrayed you, she told the ghost of Ezra Castellano. I told them everything. And I'd do it again because survival is the only legacy that matters. The wine had no response. But somewhere, in a country without extradition treaties, Evelyn hoped Ezra was drinking something extraordinary and thinking of her. Hoping he understood that love and betrayal were sometimes the same thing. And that some prices once paid could never be refunded. Chapter 6. The Arrest. 6 months after Evelyn's testimony. The federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan was all marble and judgment, the kind of building designed to make you feel small. Evelyn sat in the witness waiting room, her hands folded in her lap, wearing a simple navy suit that her lawyer had selected because it said, credible professional, instead of criminal's accomplice. Outside, the prosecution was presenting their case. Inside, Evelyn was rehearsing the testimony that would destroy the man she loved. You're doing the right thing, Agent Chen said for the 100th time. She'd become something like a handler over the past months. Part protector, part warden, ensuring Evelyn didn't change her mind or disappear like Ezra had. Am I? He left you. He saved himself and abandoned you to face this alone. You don't owe him anything. But that wasn't quite true, was it? Ezra had structured the shell companies to protect her. Had left the vineyard clean enough to survive. Had given her Victoria Chen's number with instructions to use whatever money necessary to keep Evelyn safe. He'd just drawn the line at sacrificing himself. Ms. Harper. A bailiff appeared at the door. They're ready for you. Evelyn stood on legs that felt like water. This was it. The moment where she walked into that courtroom and spoke words that would put Ezra Castellano in federal prison for the rest of his life. If they ever caught him. Because that was the thing. 6 months of searching, and the FBI still had no idea where Ezra had gone. Interpol had leads that went nowhere. His assets were frozen but untraceable. His contacts had vanished like smoke. All they had was Evelyn's testimony to build a case for when, if they found him. She walked into the courtroom and felt the weight of 300 eyes. Reporters, sketch artists, federal prosecutors hungry for a conviction. Marcus sat in the gallery looking satisfied. Claire was conspicuously absent, probably home drinking, drowning in guilt Evelyn had promised herself she'd eventually forgive but hadn't yet. The witness stand felt like an execution chamber. Evelyn was sworn in, sat down, met the prosecutor's eyes. Sarah Morrison, 40-something, sharp as broken glass, with a reputation for destroying witnesses who tried to protect defendants. Ms. Harper, Morrison began, her voice crisp. Please state your relationship with Ezra Castellano. We were business partners. And lovers. For approximately 2 years. And during those 2 years, did Mr. Castellano ever discuss with you the source of his wealth? Here it was. The question that would make everything real. Yes. And what did he tell you? Evelyn's throat was dry. She reached for the water glass, took a sip, bought herself 5 seconds of delay. He told me he acquired art and wine through various channels. Some legitimate, some less so. He called it liberating pieces from people who didn't deserve them. By less legitimate, you mean stolen? Yes. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Morrison smiled slightly. Blood in the water. Did you witness Mr. Castellano in possession of stolen artwork? Yes. Caravaggio. The Nativity with St. Francis and St. Lawrence. It hung in his penthouse in Tribeca. And did you question how he obtained a painting that's been missing since 1969? That's valued at over $40 million. Yes. He said he'd recovered it from someone who was keeping it in a basement in Palermo. That he was preserving it. Did you believe him? Evelyn met Morrison's eyes. I wanted to believe him. But did you? Then. No. I knew it was stolen. I knew he'd acquired it illegally. But her voice caught. I didn't care. The painting was beautiful. He was beautiful. And I was. You were complicit, Morrison finished. Yes. The word hung in the air like a confession, like a suicide note. Morrison walked her through everything over the next 3 hours. The Romani Conti dinner. The purchase of the vineyard. The imported rootstock from Burgundy. The equipment that had killed Miguel. Cheap, black market substituted to save money. And when Miguel Reyes died, Morrison said, what did Mr. Castellano tell you? That accidents happen. That we needed to protect the vineyard. That covering it up was necessary for everything we'd built. And you agreed. I agreed. Evelyn's hands were shaking now. I helped destroy documents. I lied to OSHA. I paid off Miguel's family to ensure they wouldn't ask questions. Why? Because I loved the vineyard more than I loved the truth. Because I loved Ezra more than I loved myself. Because, her voice broke. Because I'd already come too far to turn back. Morrison let the moment breathe. Let the jury see Evelyn's tears, her trembling hands, her complete destruction. Ms. Harper, in your opinion, did Ezra Castellano love you? The defense attorney objected. Relevance, but the judge allowed it. I don't know, Evelyn whispered. I thought he did. He said he did. But when the FBI closed in, he ran without looking back. So maybe love for Ezra Castellano means something different than it means for the rest of us. And how do you feel about him now? Evelyn looked directly at the camera she knew was recording this, at the footage that would be broadcast on every news channel, that Ezra would probably watch from whatever beach or penthouse he'd escaped to. I hate him, she said clearly. I hate him for leaving. I hate him for making me love him. I hate him for showing me what I could be and then destroying me for becoming it. But mostly, her voice dropped to almost a whisper. Mostly I hate him because even now, knowing everything, if he walked through that door I'd forgive him. And that's the worst thing he did to me. Making me love him enough to destroy myself. The cross-examination was brutal. Ezra's defense attorney, a shark named Robert Brennan who was representing him in absentia, tore into Evelyn's credibility. Painted her as a scorned woman seeking revenge. Pointed out inconsistencies in her timeline. Questioned why she'd waited so long to cooperate if she was truly horrified by Ezra's crimes. Isn't it true, Ms. Harper, that you only came forward when faced with federal prosecution yourself? Yes. So your testimony isn't about justice. It's about self-preservation. Both can be true. Can they? Or are you simply a criminal yourself, trying to trade testimony for immunity? I am a criminal, Evelyn said, surprising him. I participated in money laundering. I helped cover up a man's death. I knowingly used stolen materials to build my vineyard. I'm guilty of everything you're implying and more. But that doesn't make my testimony less true. Brennan recovered quickly. You claim to have loved Mr. Castellano. Yet here you are testifying against him. Ensuring he'll spend life in prison if ever apprehended. Is that love, Ms. Harper? No, Evelyn said quietly. It's survival. Love would have been going down with him. Love would have been refusing to testify, taking my chances with prosecution. But I chose survival over love. And I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. So you admit you're a coward. I admit I'm human. When she finally stepped down 4 hours later, Evelyn felt hollowed out. She'd told the truth. Most of it anyway. The parts that mattered. The parts that would convict Ezra if they ever found him. Agent Chen met her outside the courtroom. You did well. The jury believes you. Does it matter? We don't have a defendant. We will. Eventually. Men like Castellano always make mistakes. Get sloppy. And when he does, we'll be ready. Evelyn wasn't sure she wanted them to catch him. Wasn't sure she could survive seeing Ezra in handcuffs, led into a courtroom to face the consequences of her testimony. But she also knew. Some part of her would always be waiting for that moment. For the chance to see him one more time, even if it was across a courtroom floor. Even if he looked at her with hatred instead of love. Even if it destroyed them both completely. The media circus lasted for weeks. Evelyn Harper became infamous. The master sommelier who'd built an empire with a criminal, who'd loved a man the FBI called untouchable, who'd betrayed him to save herself. Think pieces debated her morality. Twitter argued whether she was victim or villain. Wine critics questioned whether her palate could be trusted if her ethics couldn't. The vineyard should have collapsed under the scrutiny. Instead it thrived. Orders doubled. Collectors wanted wines made by the infamous Evelyn Harper. Restaurants fought for allocation, knowing the scandal would drive customers. Tourists came for the story and stayed for the tastings. Notoriety sells, her business manager said during a quarterly review. We're projecting 40% growth this year. Felt like winning and losing simultaneously. Her mother visited once, sat in the tasting room and said, "Your father would have hated the scandal, but he would have been proud of the wine." I'm not sure which matters more. The wine always. Scandal fades. Great wine is forever. Claire sent letters Evelyn didn't open. Marcus got engaged to someone new and sent an invitation that felt like a final fuck you. Victoria Chen continued representing the vineyard, navigating the legal complexities of maintaining a business built partially on laundered money. The good news, Victoria said during one meeting, is that we've successfully argued the vineyard was a legitimate purchase. The shell companies have been untangled enough to prove your ownership is clean. You're in the clear, legally speaking. And the bad news? The bad news is you'll spend the rest of your life explaining this. Every interview, every wine event, every professional interaction will include questions about Ezra Castellano and your testimony against him. So I'm infamous. You're legendary. There's a difference. Evelyn wasn't sure there was. 6 months after her testimony, on a Tuesday in October, Evelyn received a package. No return address. Postmarked from Geneva. Inside, a bottle of wine. Romani Conti, 1945. The same vintage they'd shared at their first dinner. And a note, handwritten in Ezra's elegant script. For the woman who taught a monster to love. I forgive you for testifying. I understand you did what you had to do. I would have done the same. But I need you to understand something. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because loving you wasn't enough to make me brave. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for everything. But I'm not sorry we had what we had. Drink this and remember we made something beautiful. Even if it destroyed us both. Even if we lost everything in the making. We made something that will outlast us. And maybe that's the only redemption we get. P.S. They'll never find me. I'm too careful, too prepared, too good at disappearing. But I want you to know, every bottle of wine I drink I think of you. Every sunset over water reminds me of mornings in the vineyard. Every beautiful thing I see makes me wish you were there to experience it with me. I loved you. I love you still. And I'll love you when I'm gone. That's the only truth I have left. Evelyn read the note 3 times, then burned it in the fireplace. Watched Ezra's words turn to ash while tears streamed down her face. She opened the Romani Conti alone in the cellar, late at night when the vineyard was quiet. Poured 2 glasses, set one across from the empty chair she'd kept for months. The wine was perfect. Course it was perfect. Silk and smoke and everything beautiful about time and care and grapes transformed into art. Tasted like goodbye. I forgive you too, Evelyn whispered to the ghost across from her. For leaving. For making me choose between you and survival. For loving me enough to ruin me but not enough to stay. She drank slowly, savoring every sip, knowing this was the last time. The last bottle from Ezra. The last message. The last connection to the man who'd given her everything and taken everything in return. When the bottle was empty, she carried both glasses upstairs and washed them carefully. Put them away in the cabinet with the good crystal, the pieces she never used. Tomorrow she'd go back to work. Would make wine that critics praised and collectors coveted. Would build on the foundation of scandal and blood, creating something that transcended its origins. But tonight was for mourning what they'd had, what they'd lost, what they'd destroyed in the making. At dawn, Evelyn stood in the vineyard and watched the sun rise over vines she'd planted with stolen rootstock and questionable money. Her phone buzzed, the business manager, asking about the spring release schedule. Life continued with the brutal efficiency of all things that don't care about your breaking heart. And Evelyn Harper, master sommelier, criminal's accomplice, builder of empires, took a deep breath and decided. Survival was its own kind of victory, even if it felt like defeat. 3 months later, the call came at 3 a.m. Evelyn answered on instinct, still half asleep, and heard Agent Chen's voice. We found him. Her heart stopped. What? Ezra Castellano. We found him. Or rather, Interpol did. He's in custody in Buenos Aires. Extradition papers are being filed. He'll be back in the U.S. within 2 weeks. Evelyn sat up, suddenly wide awake. How? He got sloppy. Tried to acquire a Vermeer from a private collection. Didn't properly vet his contacts. One of them was an informant. Argentine police arrested him this morning. Is he? Evelyn's voice caught. Is he okay? He's fine. Pissed off according to reports. But physically fine. We'll need you to testify again. In person this time with him in the courtroom. Can you do that? Could she? Could she sit in a witness stand and meet Ezra's eyes while condemning him to life in prison? Yes, Evelyn heard herself say. I'll testify. Good. We'll be in touch about the schedule. Evelyn. Chen's voice softened. I know this is hard. But you're doing the right thing. After she hung up, Evelyn sat in the dark and tried to remember how to breathe. Ezra was caught. Would be extradited. Would face trial. And she would have to look him in the eye and destroy him all over again. She went to the cellar, pulled out a bottle of their reserve Pinot, the 4th vintage, the one wine Spectator had called transcendent, and poured a single glass. You got caught, she said to the empty room. To the ghost of the man who'd soon be very, very real. You got sloppy and careless and caught. And now I have to finish what I started. The wine tasted like victory and defeat in equal measure. Outside, the vineyard slept, oblivious to the storm coming. And Evelyn Harper, survivor, betrayer, builder of beautiful things on foundations of blood, drank alone and waited for the man she'd loved and destroyed to come home and face his reckoning. Chapter 7. 4 years of silence. Trial. Ezra Castellano arrived at JFK Airport in handcuffs on a Tuesday in February, flanked by U.S. Marshals and a media circus that would have made Hollywood jealous. Evelyn watched the footage on the news from her office at the vineyard. The cameras caught him descending from the plane, thinner than she remembered. His dark hair touched with gray at the temples, but still devastatingly beautiful in that dangerous way. He kept his head high, his expression neutral, looking more like a CO being inconvenienced than a criminal facing life in prison. When a reporter shouted a question about Evelyn Harper, his jaw tightened, just for a second, then the mask was back in place. No comment, his lawyer said, steering him toward the waiting vehicles. Evelyn turned off the television and poured herself a drink. It was 11 in the morning, but some moments required whiskey instead of wine. Her phone immediately started buzzing. Agent Chen, he's back. Trial starts in 6 weeks. We need to prep you. Victoria Chen, no relation to the agent, though the shared surname had caused confusion. Don't watch the news. Don't read the coverage. Focus on the vineyard. I'll handle the legal aspects. Her mother, are you all right? Marcus. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? She deleted that one without responding. Nothing from Claire. Her sister had disappeared into rehab 3 months ago, finally confronting the alcoholism that had spiraled after she'd turned evidence. Evelyn had paid for the facility. Expensive, private, effective. It was easier than forgiveness. The only message that mattered never came. Because Ezra was in federal custody, allowed only supervised communications through his lawyers, and whatever he wanted to say to her would have to wait until the trial. The prosecution offered her one chance to see him before testimony. Sometimes it helps, Agent Chen explained. Reminds witnesses why they're cooperating. Makes the defendant real instead of abstract. I don't need reminding, Evelyn said. I remember exactly who he is. But she agreed anyway. Because some part of her, the part that still poured 2 glasses, still set a place for ghosts, needed to see him. Needed to confirm he was real, that this wasn't another nightmare she'd eventually wake from. The meeting was arranged at the detention center in Manhattan. Maximum security, designed for high-risk defendants who might try to escape or be extracted. Evelyn went through 3 security checkpoints, surrendered her phone and bag, and was led to a small room with a table, 2 chairs, and a guard by the door. Then she waited. When the door opened and Ezra walked in, hands cuffed, wearing an orange jumpsuit that should have diminished him but somehow didn't, Evelyn forgot how to breathe. He looked at her for a long moment. Then, hello Bellissima. The endearment hit like a physical blow. Evelyn's hands tightened on the edge of the table, anchoring herself. Don't call me that. Why not? It's what you are. He sat down across from her with the same fluid grace he'd always had, as if federal detention was a minor inconvenience. Beautiful. Devastating. The woman who destroyed me. You destroyed yourself. Did I? Or did I simply love you enough to give you the ammunition? His eyes, still dark, still unreadable, fixed on her face. I read your testimony. All of it. They gave me transcripts. You didn't hold back. I told the truth. You told their truth. Painted me as a monster who seduced an innocent woman and corrupted her. Very compelling narrative. Wasn't it true? Some of it. He leaned forward as much as the cuffs would allow. But you left out the part where you came willingly. Where you knew exactly what I was and chose me anyway. Where you loved building that vineyard as much as I loved stealing art. Not despite the crime, but because of it. Evelyn's throat was tight. I was testifying, not writing a romance novel. No, you were saving yourself. Which I understand. Which I would have done. But don't rewrite history to make yourself more palatable, Evelyn. We were both monsters. That's what made us perfect. We weren't perfect. We were toxic. Same thing sometimes. They sat in silence for a moment. The guard by the door shifted, uncomfortable with whatever energy was sparking between them. Why did you come? Ezra asked finally. You're not required to see me before trial. So why? I don't know. Yes, you do. Evelyn met his eyes. I needed to see if I still loved you. If looking at you would make me want to recant, refuse to testify, burn everything down to save you. And I do. Still love you, I mean. Which is pathetic and self-destructive and proves I learned nothing from any of this. Something flickered in Ezra's expression. Triumph, maybe, or pain. Good. Good. Because I still love you too. And I was afraid I was the only one suffering. He tried to reach across the table, but the cuffs stopped him. Evelyn, listen to me. I don't blame you for testifying. I don't blame you for choosing survival. I would have done the same. Then why does it feel like I killed you? Because love and murder are closer than people want to admit. The guard cleared his throat. 5 minutes. Ezra's jaw tightened with frustration. 5 minutes to say everything I've needed to say for 2 years. Efficient. Say it quickly then. I'm sorry. For leaving you. For not being brave enough to stay and face consequences together. For making you choose between me and your life. For. His voice caught. For everything except loving you. That's the only thing I'd do again. Tears were streaming down Evelyn's face now, but she didn't wipe them away. I'm sorry too. For testifying. For betraying you. For not being strong enough to. Don't apologize for surviving. That's the one thing you have nothing to apologize for. Time's up, the guard said. Ezra stood, and Evelyn stood with him, wanting to touch him, hold him, feel something real after 2 years of ghosts. Ezra! I know. He smiled, sad and beautiful and completely devastating. I know everything you want to say. Feel it too. But we're out of time. The guard led him to the door. He paused at the threshold, looked back. The vineyard, he said. How is it? Thriving. The 5th vintage is our best yet. Good. That's. He swallowed hard. That's good. Keep building it. Make it legendary. Give them something beautiful to remember when I'm gone. Ezra. But the door closed, and he was gone. And Evelyn was alone in the interrogation room with her tears and her breaking heart and the knowledge that in 6 weeks, she'd walk into a courtroom and destroy him completely. The trial week 1. The courtroom was packed for opening arguments. Every major news outlet had reporters present. The gallery was filled with federal agents, art world figures, and curious observers who wanted to see the infamous Ezra Castellano finally face justice. Evelyn sat in the witness waiting room, listening to the proceedings through a speaker system. The prosecutor, Sarah Morrison, back for round 2, painted Ezra as a criminal mastermind who'd operated with impunity for 2 decades. Stolen art worth hundreds of millions. Money laundering schemes that spanned continents. A network of accomplices he'd manipulated or intimidated into compliance. And at the center of it all, Morrison said, is Evelyn Harper, a talented sommelier who caught his attention, who he seduced and corrupted, who he used to legitimize his operations through her vineyard. She will testify to his crimes. She will confirm what we've spent years investigating. She will prove that Ezra Castellano is not a misunderstood art lover, but a calculating criminal who destroys everything he touches. The defense attorney, Robert Brennan, countered with a different narrative. Ezra as Robin Hood, liberating art from people who hoarded it. A man who broke unjust laws to preserve beauty. Who, yes, crossed legal lines, but always with the intention of saving rather than destroying. Ms. Harper will testify, Brennan acknowledged. But ask yourselves, is she a victim or is she a scorned lover seeking revenge? Is her testimony truth? Or is it a carefully constructed narrative to save herself from prosecution? The evidence will show that Evelyn Harper was not deceived. She was complicit. She knew exactly what she was doing. And now she's trying to rewrite history to make herself the hero of a story where she was always the villain. Evelyn listened and felt sick. Both versions were true. Both versions were lies. The reality was Messier. Two people who'd loved each other into mutual destruction, who'd built something beautiful on a foundation of bones, who'd each made choices they couldn't take back. When they finally called her to testify on day 3, Evelyn walked into that courtroom and met Ezra's eyes across the distance. He looked at her like she was still everything, and she hated him for it. Testimony. Her testimony lasted 4 days. Morrison walked her through everything again. Every crime, every compromise, every moment of complicity. Evelyn answered honestly, no longer trying to paint herself as victim or villain. Just a woman who'd made terrible choices for what felt like good reasons. Did you love him? Morrison asked on day 2. Yes. Do you still? Evelyn looked directly at Ezra. Yes. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. And yet you're here, testifying against him. Ensuring he spends the rest of his life in prison. How do you reconcile that? I don't, Evelyn said quietly. I live with the contradiction. I love him. I'm destroying him. Both things are true. Both things will haunt me forever. But love doesn't negate responsibility. It doesn't excuse crime. And it doesn't mean I should sacrifice myself to save him. Even though he loved you. Especially because he loved me. Real love doesn't demand martyrdom. Real love wants you to survive, even if survival costs them everything. Morrison looked satisfied. No further questions. The cross-examination was brutal. Brennan tore into every inconsistency, every moment where Evelyn's story shifted from victim to willing participant. He forced her to admit she'd enjoyed the power, the money, the feeling of breaking rules and getting away with it. You weren't corrupted, were you, Ms. Harper? You were liberated. Both can be true. Can they? Or are you simply a criminal trying to avoid consequences by blaming the man you once loved? I am a criminal. I've never denied that. But I'm a criminal because of choices I made, not because Ezra forced me. And now I'm trying to atone by telling the truth. The truth. Or the version of truth that keeps you out of prison. The only truth I have. On day 4, Morrison brought out the evidence Evelyn had provided. Shipping manifests, payment records, correspondence. Each document was another nail in Ezra's coffin, and each one felt like Evelyn was driving the hammer. When she finally stepped down, exhausted and hollowed out, she looked at Ezra one last time. He smiled at her, sad and understanding and absolutely devastating. And Evelyn knew, whatever happened next, they were both already destroyed. The verdict. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Evelyn spent that time at the vineyard, working until her hands ached and her mind was too tired for thought. The 6th vintage was being bottled, the one they'd planned together before everything fell apart. It was extraordinary, possibly their best work yet. Felt like building a monument on a grave. When the verdict came in, Victoria called, "Guilty. On all counts." Sentencing in 2 weeks, but the prosecution is pushing for 25 years minimum. Evelyn sat down on the cellar floor and cried. Not because she was surprised. Not because she hadn't known this was coming. But because 25 years meant Ezra would be 70 when he got out. Meant he'd spend whatever remained of his life in a cage. Meant the man who'd taught her to love beauty and break rules and build something extraordinary would die slowly in federal prison. Did he say anything? She asked Victoria. When they read the verdict. No. He just smiled. Like he'd expected it all along. Of course he had. Ezra always planned for every contingency. Including this one. And now we wait for sentencing. And Evelyn. Victoria's voice went soft. You should prepare for the possibility that he'll ask to see you. Before they transfer him to whatever facility he's assigned to. If he does, will you go? I don't know. Think about it. You have 2 weeks. The request came 1 week later. Ezra wanted to see her. One final conversation before sentencing. Before everything became permanent and irreversible. Don't go, Agent Chen advised. There's nothing left to say. Go, Victoria countered. You'll regret it forever if you don't. Evelyn stood in the vineyard and looked at everything they'd built. Rows of vines heavy with next year's harvest. The tasting room where tourists came to drink wine made by infamous Evelyn Harper. The cellar filled with bottles that would outlast them both. She thought about Miguel, whose death they'd covered up. About Claire, still in rehab trying to put her life back together. About Marcus, who'd gotten his revenge in his new wife and probably thought justice had been served. She thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago. Heartbroken and champagne drunk and desperate enough to ask a stranger for a kiss. And she thought about the woman she was now. Infamous and wealthy and completely alone. I'll go, she told Victoria. One last time. And then I'm done. The detention center felt different this time. More permanent. More final. Ezra was brought in wearing the same orange jumpsuit, but he looked smaller somehow. Diminished by the verdict. By the reality of 25 years in federal prison. You came, he said, sitting down across from her. I came. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ezra said, I'm not going to apologize. For anything. We built something beautiful. Cost us everything. But I don't regret it. I do, Evelyn said quietly. I regret Miguel. I regret the lies. I regret. Don't regret me. How can I not? You're going to prison for 25 years because of my testimony. I'm going to prison for 25 years because of crimes I committed, Ezra corrected. Your testimony just made it official. But Evelyn, he leaned forward. I need you to understand something. I don't blame you. I don't hate you. I love you, and I will continue loving you for the next 25 years and whatever comes after. Don't. Tears were streaming down her face. Don't make this harder than it is. I'm not. I'm telling you the truth. The only truth that matters. He tried to reach across the table again, but the cuffs stopped him. Build the vineyard into something legendary. Make wines that critics weep over. Live a life so extraordinary that everyone forgets the scandal. And someday when I'm old and gray and finally free, come find me. Tell me about everything I missed. Let me taste one bottle of the wine we made together. Ezra, promise me. Promise you won't waste your life mourning what we lost. Promise you'll build something beautiful from the ruins. I promise, Evelyn whispered. Good. He smiled, and for just a moment, he looked like the man who'd kissed her at the gala. Dangerous and beautiful and completely devastating. Now go. Live. Forget me if you can. Remember me if you must. But don't let this destroy you the way it's destroying me. The guard called time and Ezra stood. I love you, he said. I loved you the moment you asked a stranger to kiss you. I'll love you when I'm 90 and broken and finally free. And I'll love you when I'm dead and gone and nothing but a story you tell about the time you touched a monster and survived. I love you too, Evelyn said. And I hate you. And I'll never forgive you. And I'll forgive you every day. And And none of it makes sense and all of it is true. That's us, Ezra said with a sad laugh. Contradictions and complications and crimes dressed up as love. The door opened. The guard gestured. Ezra looked at her one last time. Thank you. For the vineyard. For the wine. For showing me what it felt like to be human instead of monster. Even if it destroyed us both. Then he was gone, and Evelyn was alone in the interrogation room with her tears and her guilt and the knowledge that she'd never see him again. Not in this life anyway. Sentencing. The judge gave him 27 years. 2 more than the prosecution asked for, because Ezra had shown no remorse, no contrition, no acknowledgement that his crimes had hurt anyone. You have corrupted every person you've touched, the judge said from the bench. Including Ms. Harper, who by her own admission was led into criminal activity by your influence. You show no signs of rehabilitation, no understanding of the harm you've caused. Therefore, this court sentences you to 27 years in federal prison, with eligibility for parole after 20. Ezra accepted the sentence without flinching, without speaking, without looking at anyone except, for just a moment, the spot in the gallery where Evelyn sat. Their eyes met across the courtroom. And then he was led away, and it was over. Evelyn left the courthouse and drove to the vineyard in silence. She opened a bottle of their reserve Pinot, the 6th vintage, the one they'd planned together, the one that would win international awards, and poured 2 glasses. Set one across from the empty chair she'd kept for 3 years. 27 years, she said to the ghost of Ezra Castellano. You'll be 74 when you get out. If you get out. If you survive that long. The wine tasted like everything beautiful about time and care and grapes transformed into art. Tasted like goodbye. I'm keeping the vineyard, she told him. I'm making it legendary like you asked. And someday when you're old and gray and finally free, I'll find you. We'll drink 1 bottle of the wine we made together. And we'll pretend for just a moment that we made different choices. Outside, the vineyard slept under winter snow. Inside, Evelyn Harper sat alone with her wine and her memories and the weight of 27 years she'd have to carry. She drank until the bottle was empty. Until the ghosts were quiet. Until she could face the morning and the work and the life she'd chosen over love. And when dawn came, she went back to work. Because legacy, she'd learned, was built on ruins. And some prices once paid could never be refunded. Chapter 8. The Final Vintage. 4 years after sentencing, Evelyn Harper had become what she'd always feared and secretly wanted. Legendary. Harper Vineyard produced wines that made critics weep. Their reserve Pinot Noir sold out within hours of each release, with bottles fetching thousands at auction. She'd expanded operations, bought adjacent properties, hired a staff of 40. The tasting room hosted senators and celebrities. Wine magazines did features. She'd been profiled in the Times, the journal Vanity Fair. Harper has transcended scandal, one article read. Her wines speak a language of complexity and contradiction, beautiful things born from difficult circumstances. She has become, against all odds, one of America's finest winemakers. What they didn't write about was how she still poured 2 glasses every night. How she still set a place for ghosts. How she kept every letter Ezra sent from federal prison, 1 per month like clockwork, describing books he'd read and sunsets through barred windows and the particular loneliness of paying for crimes with decades of your life. She never wrote back. But she read every word. The call came on a Tuesday in November, 4 years and 3 months after sentencing. Victoria Chen's voice was strange, tight with something Evelyn couldn't identify. I need you to sit down. What happened? There's been an incident. At the prison. Ezra. She stopped and Evelyn's blood went cold. He's in the hospital. Critical condition. They're saying it was an altercation with another inmate, but what? But the details don't add up. The other inmate has ties to people Ezra testified against during sentencing. People who've been waiting 4 years for an opportunity. Evelyn's hands were shaking. Is he going to die? I don't know. The doctors aren't sure. Evelyn, it's bad. Internal injuries, head trauma. He might not wake up. And if he does, I need to see him. That's complicated. He's in the prison medical facility, technically still in custody. Only immediate family is allowed, and you're not. I'm his emergency contact. Check his paperwork. He listed me years ago, before everything fell apart. He told me once. Said if anything happened. He wanted me to be the one who decided whether to let him go. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll make some calls. But Evelyn, if you go, the media will find out. They'll crucify you. Criminal's lover rushes to his bedside. It'll be everywhere. I don't care. Are you sure? Evelyn looked around her office. Awards on the walls, contracts on the desk, photographs of vineyard expansions and successful harvests. Everything she'd built from the ruins of loving Ezra Castellano. I'm sure, she said. Make the calls. The prison medical facility was sterile and depressing. All fluorescent lights and the smell of industrial cleaner trying to mask worse things underneath. Evelyn was escorted by 2 guards through multiple security checkpoints, patted down, wand, treated like a threat even though she'd come to see a man who might be dying. The ward was small. 6 beds separated by curtains. Ezra was in the last one, hooked up to machines that beeped rhythmically. His face was swollen and bruised, one eye completely shut. Bandages covered his chest, and 4 dripped clear fluid into his arm. He looked nothing like the beautiful, dangerous man who'd kissed her at the gala. He looked broken. Evelyn sat in the plastic chair beside his bed and took his hand, careful of the 4 of the bruises of all the ways he'd been damaged. Hey, she whispered. It's me. I'm here. No response. Just the steady beep of monitors and the rasp of his breathing. A doctor appeared, young, overworked, with the exhausted look of someone who'd seen too much. You're the emergency contact. Yes. He's stable for now, but the next 48 hours are critical. The head trauma is severe. There's swelling on his brain. We've done what we can, but... The doctor paused. If he doesn't wake up in the next few days, we'll need to discuss options. What kind of options? Quality of life. Whether to continue aggressive treatment or transition to comfort care. I know that's not what you want to hear, but... He'll wake up, Evelyn said with certainty she didn't feel. He's too stubborn to die in a prison hospital. The doctor looked skeptical but nodded. I'll give you some privacy. Press the call button if anything changes. Alone with Ezra and the machines keeping him alive, Evelyn let herself break. You can't die, she told him, tears streaming down her face. You can't die here like this after everything. You're supposed to get out in 20 years. You're supposed to be old and gray and free. We're supposed to drink wine together and pretend we made different choices. His hand was warm in hers but completely unresponsive. I kept the vineyard, she continued, talking because silence felt like giving up. Like you asked. Made it legendary. The 9th vintage is the best yet. Complex, layered, everything we dreamed it could be. Critics are calling it transcendent. You'd be so proud. Nothing. Just breathing and beeping and the fluorescent hum of lights that never turned off. I'm sorry, Evelyn whispered. For testifying. For destroying you. For choosing survival over love. I'm sorry for all of it. But I'm not sorry we had what we had. I'm not sorry I loved you. And I'm not sorry I still do. She sat there for hours, holding his hand, talking about the vineyard and the wines and everything he was missing. The guards changed shifts. The doctor checked in twice. Night became day became night again. And Ezra didn't wake up. On the 2nd day, Claire came. Evelyn was surprised to see her sister. Sober now, thin but healthy looking, eyes clear for the first time in years. Victoria told me, Claire said quietly. About Ezra. I don't know what I thought. But you shouldn't be alone. I'm not alone. Evelyn gestured to the unconscious man in the bed. He's here. Evie. Don't. She was too tired for reconciliation, for forgiveness, for anything except the vigil she'd been keeping. If you came to apologize again, save it. If you came to tell me I should let him go, I already know. If you came for any reason except sitting quietly while I wait for him to die, then you should leave. Claire sat down in the second plastic chair. Then I'll sit quietly. They sat together in silence, these two sisters who'd destroyed each other over a man who'd been destroyed himself. After an hour, Claire said, "I'm sorry. For everything. For Marcus, for the evidence, for all of it. I was jealous and bitter and I wanted you to hurt the way I was hurting. And I got my wish. And it didn't make anything better. I know. Do you forgive me?" Evelyn looked at Ezra's bruised face, at the machines keeping him alive, at the ruins of everything they'd built. "Ask me in 20 years, she said. When I've had time to figure out if forgiveness is even possible." Claire nodded, accepting that. "The vineyard. It's beautiful. I drove through last month. Didn't stop, didn't want to intrude, but I saw it. You did it, Evie. You made something extraordinary. We made something extraordinary. Ezra and I. This is just the aftermath." "No," Claire said quietly. "This is the legacy. What you build after everything falls apart, that's what matters. Not what you had, but what you salvaged from the wreckage." They sat together until visiting hours ended, until the guards told them they had to leave. Claire hugged Evelyn at the door, tentative, uncertain but genuine. "Call me if anything changes," she said. "I'll come back. I'll sit with you. Whatever you need." "Thank you." After Claire left, Evelyn snuck back in, bribed a guard with a bottle of reserve Pinot worth $3,000, the kind of currency that worked everywhere. She spent the night beside Ezra's bed, holding his hand, praying to gods she didn't believe in. At 3 a.m, his fingers twitched. The doctors called it a miracle. Ezra opened his eyes on the third day, confused and in pain but alive. The swelling on his brain had decreased. The internal injuries were healing. He'd need physical therapy, would have permanent damage to his vision in one eye, would probably have chronic pain for the rest of his life. But he'd live. "Hey," Evelyn said when his eyes finally focused on her face. "Welcome back." "Bellissima," he rasped, voice rough from the breathing tube they'd removed that morning. "You came." "Of course I came. Thought." He coughed, winced with pain. "Thought you'd let me die. Would have been easier. Nothing about us has ever been easy." He smiled, or tried to, the bruises making it more of a grimace. "True." They were silent for a moment. Then Ezra said, "It wasn't an accident. The attack. Guy I testified against, he paid someone inside. Waited 4 years for the right opportunity. I know. They'll try again. When I'm back in general population. When I'm vulnerable. I have." He stopped, breathing hard. "I have enemies, Evelyn. People who want me dead. People with patience and resources and nothing but time. Then we'll get you transferred. Protective custody. Something." "There is no we," Ezra interrupted. "You need to go. Back to the vineyard. Back to your life. Forget about this. Forget about me." "I can't. You have to." His hand tightened on hers, weak but determined. "I'm not surviving 23 more years of this. I'm not dying slowly in a cage while people hunt me for revenge. I'm done, Evelyn. I'm so fucking done." Her stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I made arrangements. Before the attack, when I realized it was coming. Arrangements that will look like natural causes but aren't. Arrangements that end this on my terms instead of theirs." "No." Evelyn's voice was sharp. "No, you can't, Ezra, you can't give up. Not after everything. I'm not giving up. I'm choosing how this ends." He pulled her closer, despite the pain it clearly caused. "And I'm choosing you. One last time. One last bottle of wine. One last perfect night before I go. Will you give me that? You're asking me to help you die. I'm asking you to help me live one more time before I stop." Evelyn should have said no. should have called the guards, the doctors, should have prevented whatever he was planning. Instead, she said, "What do you need?" The plan was insane. Ezra had contacts, even in prison, especially in prison. People who owed him favors, who remembered when he'd been powerful and dangerous instead of broken and dying slowly. "There's a guard," he explained over the next few days as he slowly recovered. "Edwards. He's worked here for 20 years. He's also been taking money from me since I arrived, delivering messages, facilitating meetings. He'll help. For the right price." "How much?" "Everything I have left. Offshore accounts they never found. Art they never recovered. All of it goes to him in exchange for one night. One night outside these walls before I—" He stopped. "Before it ends. This is insane. This is mercy." He caught her hand. "I'm dying anyway, Evelyn. Either from another attack, or from decades rotting in this place. I'm choosing to go on my terms. With you. Drinking wine in the vineyard we built. Doesn't that sound better than bleeding out on a prison floor?" Did. God help her, it did. "What do I need to do?" Over the next week they planned. Edwards would arrange a medical transport. Paperwork showing Ezra needed specialized treatment at an outside facility. The guards would be paid to look the other way. Evelyn would wait at a predetermined location with a car. They'd have 12 hours before anyone noticed. 12 hours to drive to the vineyard, drink wine and say goodbye. "And then?" Evelyn asked. "And then I take the pills my doctor smuggled in. Morphine, enough to stop my heart peacefully. It'll look like complications from my injuries. No one will question it. No one will blame you. I'll blame me. You'll survive." He touched her face, gentle despite the bandages, despite everything. "You always do." The escape happened on a Tuesday in December, exactly 1 month after the attack. The medical transport left the prison at 7 p.m. Edwards drove, Ezra in the back, restrained but alert. They stopped at a gas station 30 miles away, where Evelyn waited with a Mercedes and a bottle of wine. 10 hours, Edwards said, unlocking Ezra's restraints. "After that I call it in. Search begins. You need to be done by then." "We will be," Ezra said. He climbed into Evelyn's car, moving slowly, still healing. She drove in silence toward the vineyard, neither of them speaking because words felt inadequate. When they arrived, the property was dark. She'd sent the staff home, claimed she needed privacy for inventory. The vineyard stretched out under a clear December sky, vines bare and sleeping, waiting for spring. "It's beautiful," Ezra said, looking out over everything they'd built. "Even more beautiful than I remembered. It's yours as much as mine." "No, it's yours. I just gave you the tools. You made it legendary." They went to the cellar, the private one, the one tourists never saw, where the best vintages aged in perfect darkness. Evelyn selected a bottle, Romani Conti, 1990. The same vintage they'd shared at their first dinner a lifetime ago. "Perfect choice," Ezra said. She opened it carefully, letting it breathe while they sat at the small tasting table. The same table where she'd spent 4 years talking to ghosts. "I don't want to do this," Evelyn said quietly. "I don't want to say goodbye." "I know. But we don't have a choice. This ends tonight one way or another. At least this way we get to choose how." She poured 2 glasses. The wine glowed in the candlelight, garnet and gold, beautiful as memory. "To us," Ezra said, raising his glass. "To the vineyard. To the wine. To the most beautiful, terrible love affair 2 broken people ever had. To ruins and legacies," Evelyn added. "To building beautiful things that destroy us." They drank, and the wine was perfect. Course it was perfect. Silk and smoke and everything they'd ever wanted. "Tell me about the last 4 years," Ezra said. "All of it. Don't leave anything out." So she did. She told him about the vintages, the awards, the expansion. About making peace with her mother, tentative reconciliation with Claire. About Marcus getting married and divorced within 2 years. Karma apparently was real. About the tourists who came to taste wine made by infamous Evelyn Harper, and left calling it transcendent. You did it, Ezra said quietly. Everything we dreamed. You made it real. We made it real. I just finished what we started. They drank slowly, savoring every sip, talking about everything and nothing. About Sicily and wine and the particular beauty of things that don't last. About the night they met and the kiss that ruined them both. Do you regret it? Ezra asked. Any of it? Every day, Evelyn said honestly. And not at all. How's that for contradiction? That's love. When the bottle was empty, Ezra pulled out a small plastic bag from his pocket. Inside pills. 20 of them. Enough to stop his heart peacefully within an hour. This is it, he said. Last chance to change your mind. Call the guards. Send me back. Let me die slowly in that place over the next 2 decades. Is that what you want? No. But I need to know you're okay with this. That you won't spend the rest of your life blaming yourself. Evelyn looked at this man she'd loved and destroyed and loved again. This beautiful, broken criminal who'd given her everything and taken everything in return. I'll blame myself anyway, she said. But I'd rather blame myself for giving you peace than for letting you suffer. Thank you. He kissed her, gentle, careful of his still healing injuries. For everything. For the vineyard. For the wine. For showing me what it felt like to be human instead of monster. You were never a monster. I was. But you loved me anyway. That's the miracle. He took the pills all at once, washing them down with the last drops of wine. Then they moved to the couch in the cellar sitting area, the one she'd bought for private tastings that she'd never actually used for anything except crying alone. Ezra lay down with his head in her lap, and Evelyn stroked his hair while he slowly drifted away. Tell me about the next vintage, he murmured, already slurring. The one you'll make without me. It'll be extraordinary. Complex. Everything we ever wanted. I'll call it the Castellano vintage. Don't. His eyes were closing. Call it redemption. Or ruins. Something that tells the truth. What is the truth? That beautiful things cost everything. That love and destruction are the same. That we had something perfect and terrible and worth every consequence. His breathing was slowing, each breath longer between than the last. Ezra! Don't cry. Please don't cry. This is. He smiled, peaceful. This is perfect. Wine and you and the vineyard. Everything I wanted. Thank you. I love you. I know. I've always known. His hand found hers, squeezed weakly. Build something beautiful from this. Promise me. I promise. Good. His eyes closed. Good. He took 3 more breaths. Then stopped. And Evelyn Harper sat in her wine cellar holding the body of the man she'd loved and destroyed, crying without sound, mourning something that had been doomed from the moment it began. She called Edwards at 5 a.m. It's done, she said. Where? The vineyard. He wanted to see it one last time. Complications from his injuries. He went peacefully. Anyone see you? No one. Good. I'll arrange the pickup. Official story. He had a medical emergency during transport, died before we could get him back to the facility. You were never there. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just disappear for a few days. Let this settle. And Ms. Harper. Sorry. For what it's worth. He talked about you constantly. You were the only real thing in his life. Evelyn hung up and sat with Ezra's body until dawn. Then she called Victoria, told her to handle everything, and walked out to the vineyard. The sun was rising over the vines, painting everything gold. In the spring those vines would wake up. Would produce grapes that she'd transform into wine that critics would call transcendent. Built on blood and love and the ruins of everything she'd destroyed in the making. I kept my promise, she said to the empty vineyard, to the ghost of Ezra Castellano. I'll build something beautiful from this. I'll make the final vintage extraordinary. And every bottle will be a confession that you were here. That we had this. That some things are worth any price. The wind answered with silence. And Evelyn Harper, master sommelier, criminal's lover, architect of her own salvation and damnation, went back to the cellar and started planning the vintage that would be her masterpiece. The one she'd call ruined. The one that would taste like goodbye. Epilogue, the cellar. 7 years later. The tour guide was young and enthusiastic, leading a group of 20 through Harper Vineyard on a crisp October afternoon. They stopped at various points: the fermentation room, the barrel aging facility, the tasting room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking vines that produced some of the world's finest Pinot Noir. Harper Vineyard is now in its 15th year of operation, the guide explained, her voice carrying the practiced cheer of someone who'd given this speech 1,000 times. Founded by master sommelier Evelyn Harper, it's become one of America's most acclaimed wineries. Our reserve vintages regularly score 98 or higher from critics. The waiting list for our ruined vintage, our rarest label, is currently 7 years long. A tourist raised her hand. Is it true the owner was involved with that criminal? The art thief. The guide's smile tightened slightly. Ms. Harper's personal life is her own. We focus on the wine here. Speaking of which, if you'll follow me to the tasting room. But the scandal, another tourist pressed. Didn't she testify against him? And didn't he die right after? Ms. Harper has never publicly commented on those events, the guide said firmly. And we respect her privacy. Now if you'll follow me. She led them away from the cellar entrance, away from the door with a discreet sign that read, "Private, no access." Behind that door, down stone steps, in a temperature-controlled room that smelled of oak and earth and time, Evelyn Harper sat alone. She was 43 now. Still beautiful, though grief had carved lines around her eyes that no amount of wine or success could erase. Her dark hair was touched with gray at the temples. She didn't color it, wore her age like armor. On the table in front of her sat 2 glasses and an open bottle. Romani Conti, 1945. The same vintage Ezra had sent her years ago with his final letter. She'd kept it sealed in a climate-controlled case, waiting for what? She wasn't sure. Reason. An ending. Permission to finally let go. Today felt like that day. The newspaper lay folded beside the glasses. The headline that had brought her down here. Seeking solace in the only place that felt real anymore. Marcus Harper found dead in apparent suicide. Former vineyard owner's death ruled self-inflicted. She'd read the article 3 times. Marcus had never recovered from losing the vineyard, from the scandal, from watching his ex-fiancé build an empire from his family's ruins. His second marriage had failed. His attempts at wine ventures had all collapsed. He'd been found in his apartment, empty bottles surrounding him. A note that simply read, "She won." Evelyn felt nothing. No satisfaction, no grief, no closure. Just the hollow acknowledgement that revenge, even successful revenge, left you empty. Her phone buzzed. "Claire. Did you hear about Marcus? Are you okay?" Her sister. Sober now for 6 years, remarried to a kind man who made her laugh, working as a counselor for women struggling with addiction. They spoke monthly, carefully rebuilding something that would never be what it was but might someday be enough. Evelyn typed back, "I'm fine. I'm at the cellar." Claire's response was immediate. "Want company? Well, but thank you. Call me if you change your mind. I love you, Evie. Love you too." She set the phone down and poured the wine. The 1945 Romani Conti was everything she'd remembered and more. Decades in the bottle had transformed it into something transcendent, layers upon layers of flavor, each sip revealing new complexity. This was why people dedicated their lives to wine. This moment of perfection, fleeting and irreplaceable. It tasted like memory and regret and everything beautiful that doesn't last. "Marcus is dead," Evelyn said to the empty chair across from her, where she still set a second glass out of habit, out of ritual, out of the inability to stop talking to ghosts. "Suicide. The article says he never recovered from losing the vineyard. From losing to me. To us." The wine offered no judgment. "I should feel something," she continued. "Triumph, maybe. or guilt. But I just feel tired. Tired of carrying all of this. The vineyard, the legacy, the weight of everyone we've destroyed in the making. She took another sip. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I'm thinking about selling, she said quietly. The vineyard. Not because I have to, it's wildly profitable. But because I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. Build wines that critics worship while sitting alone in a cellar talking to dead men. Claire thinks I should. Says it would be good for me. A fresh start. The silence stretched. But if I sell, what's left? What was the point of any of this if I just walk away? She finished her glass and poured another. The bottle was half empty now. Half full, depending on your perspective. After 15 years in the wine business, Evelyn still couldn't decide which way to see it. They still ask about you, she told Ezra's ghost. Tourists, journalists, critics. They want to know about the criminal who seduced me, who built this vineyard with stolen money, who died in my arms after I helped him escape prison. I never answer. Never comment. Never confirm or deny. Victoria says that's smart. Let them speculate. Let the mystery sell more wine. She laughed, bitter. And it does. God, it does. We're more successful now than ever. The scandal that should have destroyed us made us legendary. Isn't that what you wanted? Isn't that what we built this for? A sound from upstairs, the tour group moving on, their voices fading. I keep the cellar locked, Evelyn said. No one comes down here except me. It's mine. My sanctuary. My prison. My last connection to you. She touched the empty chair. Sometimes I think about getting rid of it. The chair, the ritual, the nightly conversations with someone who's been dead for 7 years. But then I think, what would I have left without this? She knew the answer. The vineyard. The wine. The success. All the external markers of a life well lived. And none of it felt like enough. The bottle was empty now. Evelyn held it up to the light, watching the way the candlelight refracted through the glass. I'm going to tell you something I've never said out loud, she whispered. I'm glad you're dead. Not because I hated you, but because loving you was killing me. Every day you were alive in that prison, I was dying by inches. Wondering if I'd made the right choice. Wondering if I should have saved you instead of myself. Wondering if love meant sacrificing everything, or if survival was its own kind of love. Tears were streaming down her face now. And now you're gone and I'm free, and I still feel like I'm in a cage. Isn't that the cruelest thing? You die, I live, and neither of us escapes. She set down the empty bottle and stood, suddenly unable to bear the cellar's perfect temperature control, its engineered preservation, its refusal to let anything decay naturally. Evelyn climbed the stairs to the main house, walked out to the vineyard. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of wine and blood and all the beautiful violent colors she'd ever loved. Workers were finishing the harvest, the 15th since she'd taken ownership. This year's vintage would be extraordinary, her wine master had said. Perfect weather, perfect grapes, perfect timing. Perfect, perfect, perfect. She was so tired of perfection. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Harper. A woman's voice, heavily accented. Italian, maybe. My name is Sophia Castellano. I was Ezra's sister. Evelyn's heart stopped. I'm sorry to call like this, Sophia continued. But I wanted you to know we had a service for Ezra last week. In Sicily. Small, just family. And we found something. Letters he'd written before he died. Letters he wanted you to have. I don't. Please. I'm in New York. Can I bring them to you? It's important. He was very specific that if anything happened to him, you should receive these. Evelyn should have said no. Should have maintained the distance, the silence, the clean break. Yes, she heard herself say. Come tomorrow. I'll text you the address. Sophia Castellano arrived the next morning, a woman in her 60s, elegant and sad-eyed, carrying a leather portfolio. They sat in the tasting room, and Sophia pulled out a stack of letters, all addressed to Evelyn in Ezra's handwriting. He wrote these over the 4 years he was in prison, Sophia explained. One for every year you might continue living after he was gone. He was very specific. You were to receive them starting 7 years after his death. Why 7? He said that's how long it would take you to decide whether to keep building or burn it all down. And that these letters might help you choose. Sophia handed her the first letter. This one is for now. The others. She set them on the table. One for each year, until you've read them all or decided you don't want them anymore. After Sophia left, Evelyn sat alone with the letter, afraid to open it. Finally, with shaking hands, she broke the seal. Dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, I've been dead for 7 years. And you're still there, still at the vineyard, still building the legacy we started together. Or maybe you've sold it, walked away, finally freed yourself from the ghost of a criminal who loved you too much and not enough. Either way, I need you to know something. You were never my victim. You were never corrupted or seduced or manipulated. You were my equal, my partner, my collaborator in building something beautiful and terrible. Every choice you made with open eyes. Every crime we committed together. Every consequence we face. Me in death, you in life, we earned equally. I'm not apologizing. We've done that enough. I'm releasing you. You don't have to carry me anymore. Don't have to pour 2 glasses. Don't have to keep talking to ghosts in the cellar. Don't have to build wine empires to justify what we did. You can walk away. Sell the vineyard. Start over. Live a life that isn't haunted by a man who destroyed you and himself in the pursuit of beauty. Or you can keep building. Not for me, not for redemption, not for revenge. But because you love it. Because wine is art and you're an artist. Because creating something that outlasts you is the only immortality that matters. Either choice is right. Either choice is wrong. Either choice is yours. I loved you from the moment I saw you taste wine like you were decoding the universe. I'll love you in whatever comes after this. And I'll be grateful, always, that you touched a monster and made him human. Thank you for the vineyard. Thank you for the wine. Thank you for showing me what it felt like to build something beautiful, even if it cost us everything. Now go. Live. Build or burn, but do it for yourself. Not for me. Not for anyone but you. Yours always and never, Ezra. P.S. The other letters contain practical things. Accounts I never told the FBI about, art I hid before they arrested me, resources you can access if you need them. Or don't. You've proven you don't need my money to succeed. But they're yours if you want them. Along with my love, which was always yours. Even when it destroyed us both. Evelyn read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she stood, walked to the cellar, and looked at the chair she'd kept for 7 years. Goodbye, she said to it, to the ghost, to the man who'd given her everything and taken everything and finally, released her from the obligation of mourning. She carried the chair upstairs and put it in storage. Left the cellar empty except for the wines that would outlast them all. 1 year later. The headline read, Evelyn Harper sells Harper Vineyard for undisclosed sum. Master sommelier pursues new ventures. She'd sold to a consortium of investors who promised to maintain the quality, the staff, the legacy. The sale made her wealthy beyond anything she'd imagined. Enough to retire, to travel, to finally live without the weight of building something from ruins. Her last act as owner was to create a final vintage. A single barrel, 250 bottles, labeled simply Epilogue. She sent 1 bottle to Claire, who cried when she opened it. 1 to Victoria with a note. Thank you for keeping me alive through the worst of it. 1 to Agent Chen, who'd retired from the FBI and probably threw it away, but deserved the gesture. 1 to Ezra Castellano, with her brother's letters carefully preserved and included. And 1 she kept for herself. On a Tuesday in October, exactly 15 years after the night Ezra had kissed her at the gala, Evelyn sat on a beach in Sicily, the place he'd grown up, the place he'd learned about wine from his grandfather, and opened that final bottle. It was perfect. Of course it was perfect. Complex, layered, showing every year of care and compromise and blood that had gone into making it. It tasted like memory and freedom and the particular sweetness of endings. She poured 2 glasses out of habit, then laughed and poured the second one into the sand. No more ghosts, she said to the sunset, to the Mediterranean stretching out forever, to the life she was finally ready to live without haunting. No more carrying the dead. No more building monuments to what we destroyed. She drank alone, savoring every sip, and when the bottle was empty, she left it on the beach for the tide to claim. Then Evelyn Harper, master sommelier, criminal's lover, architect of her own salvation, walked away from the ruins and toward whatever came next. Free finally. Broken forever. And somehow impossibly at peace. The end.